History books chronicle the rise and fall of empires, but beneath these grand accounts flows a deeper current of power, one that remains constant across centuries. Thus, behind the changing faces of governance, certain dynasties endure, their influence spanning continents and generations. Their children train from birth to steward vast fortunes and influence, mastering the subtle art of power while sheltered from public scrutiny. Indeed, their foundations shape policy, their art collections define culture, their donations determine which causes gain attention. Today, we explore how their control works not through obvious means, but through the elegant manipulation of finance, information, and human ambition. If we were to ask you to name an old money American dynasty that still has power today, it's likely your mind would quickly jump to household names like Rockefeller, Morgan, or Carnegie. And indeed, who would blame you? Those iconic families have their legacy embossed in our very memories with towering skyscrapers like Rockefeller Center, legendary concert venues such as Carnegie Hall, and banking giants like J.P. Morgan Chase still in operation today. However, what if we were to tell you that there is one old money family still pulling the strings of global finance behind the curtain, who is many billions of dollars richer than any Rockefeller, Morgan, or Carnegie living today? Indeed, the Mellon family of Pennsylvania has not only been in power as long as any Gilded Age robber baron, but their living descendants have maintained more wealth than almost any old money family featured on this channel, boasting a staggering fortune currently estimated at an eye-watering $12 billion. Furthermore, Mellon family members have had their hands in every stratum of American influence, from their patriarch, whose decisions as U.S. Treasury Secretary led America to experience both the Roaring Twenties and the Great Depression, all the way to the current BNY Mellon Bank, donning the family's surname, which presides over literally trillions of dollars in assets to this very day. Most assuredly, the Mellon family has it all, from a matriarch who changed the face of American interior design with her many lavish homes and sumptuous estates, to a cryptocurrency whiz-kid who's been quietly counting billions as US government regulators scramble to decide how to handle crypto. In today's episode, we'll tell you this secret old money banking dynasty's full, unauthorized journey, revealing a legacy that has quietly shaped the very backbone of American wealth and influence, as we describe. The Mellons, the secret old money family, richer than the Rockefellers. Scratching near the top of the elite scoreboard of America's richest families, the Mellon family are a little mentioned but a captivatingly formidable force. Think of them as a sleeper team in the Super Bowl of American old money affluence. And with a jaw-dropping $12 billion to their name, their bank account is as deep as it is old. And in this legendary luxury lineup, patriarch Christopher Mellon assumes the role of quarterback. Born on the 2nd of October 1957, Christopher's more than just a typical team captain. His career resembles a complex jigsaw puzzle, blending elements of high finance and secretive government roles with an unexpected twist. His involvement in UFO advocacy adds a layer of mystery. And the overall Mellon family tree, while not quite a household name like Rockefeller or Kennedy, is as intricately woven and powerful as a hidden masterpiece in an exclusive art gallery. Indeed, Christopher's lineage is a discreet yet powerful roll call of American industrial and banking leaders. At the root of this quietly influential family tree stands Thomas Mellon, the original architect of Mellon Bank, an institution that, like its founders, has played an incomparably important yet little-known role in shaping America's financial horizon. This legacy continues robustly with BNY Mellon, the evolutionary successor of Mellon Bank and the family's banking empire. Today, BNY Mellon stands as a titan in the financial world, showcasing its prowess with a remarkable 22% surge in net income and stewarding a staggering $46.9 trillion, yes, trillion with a T, in assets under custody. In short, that ranks the Mellon family's brainchild banking empire as the 13th largest bank in the United States, all while managing to be ranked among the world's most admired companies, according to Fortune magazine, in 2023. However, the Mellons, not content with banking alone, have played a game of twister with various industries. They struck black gold when they helped create Gulf Oil, which eventually became household name gas behemoth Chevron in the 1980s, and in the steel sector, they clanged swords with giants, backing Union Steel before it was scooped up by Andrew Carnegie and US Steel. But, as with any truly impressive old money dynasty, their empire didn't stop there. Their investment portfolio reads like an Oscar nominee list for America's most iconic companies, including Westinghouse Electric, Newsweek, and General Motors. But it's not all about the greenbacks. For decades, the Mellon family has also engaged in land conservation efforts. The Richard King Mellon Foundation has notably contributed over 100,000 acres to wildlife refugees. And in real estate, the Mellons are more than just casual players. From the 700-acre Virginia Mellon estate to Oak Spring Farms, a 4,000-acre expanse that was Bunny Mellon's personal Eden, they've got the Midas touch in property. And let's not overlook that 27-acre slice of Antiguan paradise, a real estate jewel in the Mellon crown. Additionally, in the political arena, family member Timothy Mellon doesn't just donate, he makes waves. His $5 million contributions to various political causes and an eye-watering $90 million to Republican campaigns since 2018 show he's not shy about backing his beliefs with his wallet. However, while it's easy to sit and bask in the shocking power, wealth and influence of this $12 billion old money leviathan known as the Mellon family, you'd be surprised to learn that they first got their start, like so many Americans, as immigrants to the country's shores centuries ago. Therefore, join us as we venture back in time to discover exactly how one Irish immigrant reached the land of the free and the home of the brave, to spawn what would become one of America's richest families of all time. The Mellons family's story begins in the 19th century, a time of significant migration, with the Mellons originating from Scotland and later settling in Tyrone, Ireland. The Gaelic origins of their surname, derived from Meal and Mealan, translated to attractive or little pleasant one, offer a glimpse into the family's heritage. You see, during this period, County Tyrone, located in the northern part of Ireland in the region of Ulster, was a key area for Scottish Protestant settlers. This migration was part of the Ulster Plantation, a process in which the British government settled Scots in Ireland to establish control over the rebellious Irish provinces. One Archibald Mellon, part of this Scottish Protestant group known as the Scotch-Irish, began the family's American story in 1816, with many Scotch-Irish like the Mellons emigrating to the United States during this time. First establishing themselves in Westmoreland County, Pennsylvania, the family's legacy would begin in earnest when, in 1818, Thomas Mellon, the future founder of Mellon Bank and first patriarch of the Mellon dynasty, entered the United States. Determined to rise above the constraints of his rural beginnings, Thomas Mellon's life was a journey of ambition and aspiration. He vividly recalls in his autobiography the moment at the age of 10 when he first glimpsed wealth and magnificence I had before no conception of. A revelation that came upon seeing the opulent estate of his future parents-in-law, Jacob Negley and Barbara Ann Negley. Then, inspired at 14 after reading the transformative stories of Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, Mellon resolved to leave farming behind. Pursuing higher education, he entered the University of Pittsburgh, then the Western University of Pennsylvania, in October 1834, and graduated in 1837. After dedicating 5 years and investing $500 in his education, Mellon turned to teaching classics briefly before successfully entering the legal profession. He then established his own law firm before subsequently being elected as a judge for the Allegheny County Court of Common Pleas. Thus, Thomas Mellon's legal acumen not only enhanced his personal wealth through astute investments in downtown real estate, but also positioned him as a reputable attorney for corporations. Indeed, Mellon's early legal successes were the bedrock of the family's financial empire. His investments in law and real estate were instrumental in the establishment of T. Mellon & Sons, a banking house that emerged as the region's largest by the end of the 19th century. Beyond real estate, Mellon also ventured into coal, forming a profitable alliance with James B. Corey, a significant figure in the Pittsburgh coal industry. This diversification into real estate and coal was pivotal in his wealth accumulation. And by 1869, Thomas Mellon had yet again pivoted from legal practice to concentrate on his investments. Therefore, his banking house, T. Mellon & Sons, had shrewdly laid the groundwork for what would later become the Mellon Financial Corporation. But Thomas Mellon's prolific ability to adapt and seize new opportunities was but a blip on the radar of what his descendants would be able to accomplish. And on a brisk spring day in March 1855, Thomas, his son, Andrew, would enter into the world to fulfill that destiny. Andrew William Mellon, affectionately known as A.W., was the sixth child born to Thomas and Sarah Jane Mellon, yet, tragically, only the fourth to survive past infancy. And from his earliest years, Andrew's life was deeply intertwined with that of his father. Distrustful of both private and public educational institutions, Thomas Mellon took it upon himself to construct a schoolhouse specifically for his children, appointing a private tutor to oversee their education. Thus, starting at age 5, Andrew was educated in this unique setting, and this tailor-made educational experience, combined with a front-row seat to his father's financial expertise, undoubtedly helped set the foundation for Andrew's future success in banking and finance. Now, the 1870s saw Andrew furthering his academic pursuits at his father's alma mater, Western University of Pennsylvania, now known as the University of Pittsburgh. However, in a twist of fate, Andrew departed without a degree, opting instead for the rich lessons of practical experience. Then, in 1873, at only 18 years of age, Andrew took a decisive step into the world of banking by joining his father's bank, T. Mellon and Sons. Despite his youth, he swiftly emerged as a key player, exhibiting a sharp acumen for banking and finance. And his formative years at the bank, including witnessing the economic maelstrom of the Panic of 1873, had undoubtedly sharpened his economic insight and banking strategy. But the year 1876 marked one of the most pivotal moments in Andrew's trajectory, as he was granted power of attorney to steer the bank's operations. With this power, over time, Andrew would develop what would be called the Mellon system of business. Indeed, this was more than a mere strategy. It became a comprehensive approach to creating a robust industrial empire. This Mellon system involved meticulously crafting a network of interconnected enterprises, each supporting and enhancing the others. For instance, their banking interests provided financial backing to their industrial ventures, such as the aluminum and oil industries, while their real estate investments offered physical and infrastructural support. Indeed, this visionary approach was instrumental in the formation of major corporations such as the Aluminum Company of America, Gulf Oil Corporation, and Union Steel, which eventually merged with United States Steel Corporation. Now, in the same year that Thomas Mellon gave his son Andrew the power of attorney over the bank, 1876, Thomas introduced his son to Henry Clay Frick, marking a significant collaboration in American industrial history. Frick, a key figure in the burgeoning steel industry, was establishing the Frick family empire, a monumental force in the industrialization of the United States. His involvement in the coke and steel industries, pivotal for the era's rapid industrial growth, made Frick an invaluable ally for the Mellons. And by 1887, Andrew's brother, Richard B. Mellon, had also joined as co-owner and vice president, further consolidating family control over the business. Now, during the 1880s, Andrew Mellon, in collaboration with Frick, took control of the Pittsburgh National Bank of Commerce. Indeed, this was a significant power play for the family, as national banks held the exclusive right to issue banknotes, a crucial financial tool for empires like the Mellons. Specifically, issuing banknotes allowed them direct influence over the money supply and credit availability, vital components in an era of rapid economic expansion and industrialization. Furthermore, despite the considerable asset transfer from Thomas to Andrew Mellon, their enterprises remained relatively small, leading to what we would call these days a lean startup configuration in the Mellons' empire. Therefore, though T. Mellon and Sons employed just 7 individuals in 1895, this small scale suggested a strategic choice, prioritizing meticulous control over rapid expansion, laying a solid foundation for future growth. However, Andrew Mellon's immense influence was, much like many family members, not limited to business acumen. Founded in 1913 by Andrew and his brother Richard B. Mellon, the Mellon Institute stood as a symbol of innovation in scientific research. You see, the Mellon brothers, beyond their roles as bankers and venture capitalists, were foresighted in understanding the synergy between new technologies and established industries, and thus their aspiration to establish a groundbreaking research center materialized in this institute. Now, during the same period, another educational giant was taking shape. The Carnegie Institute of Technology, inaugurated in 1900 by legendary industrialist and one-time richest person in the world, Andrew Carnegie, aimed to mirror the Scottish model of technical education, catering to the needs of an industrializing society, and this particular school, initially serving the educational requirements of working-class children, evolved into a vital center for practical education, later becoming the Carnegie Institute of Technology, or Carnegie Tech. The paths of these two institutions next converged in 1960, when discussions about a merger were initiated by family member Paul Mellon, representing the Mellon legacy. This historic amalgamation in 1967 led to the formation of Carnegie Mellon University, a fusion that was not just an institutional merger, but also a culmination of the Mellons' long-standing support, leading to the establishment of the Mellon College of Science and the College of Humanities and Social Sciences. In the 21st century, CMU is acclaimed for its educational excellence, recently ranked number 24 among national universities in the US News and World Report and third for most innovative schools. Its international reputation is equally strong, with commendable top 30 positions in global rankings by Times Higher Education and QS World University Rankings. Thus, by the 1920s, Andrew W. Mellon's financial and culture stature had soared, making him one of America's wealthiest and influential individuals. However, in order to solidify his already prodigious financial influence, he would need to enter into a wholly different realm of power, politics. In 1921, a pivotal moment in American history unfolded as President Warren G. Harding appointed Andrew Mellon, an already legendary figure of significant wealth and influence, as the Secretary of the Treasury. This role, which Mellon held across a shocking 3 presidential administrations, catapulted him into the limelight of national affairs. Confronting a substantial federal debt, a byproduct of World War I expenditures, Mellon embarked on an ambitious strategy to reform taxation by using an, at the time, unconventional approach: lower tax rates to spur economic activity, thereby boosting tax revenue. Consequently, the Revenue Acts of 1921, 1924 and 1926 materialized Mellon's vision, resulting in a drastic reduction of the top marginal tax rate from 73% in 1922 to a mere 24% by 1929. This period witnessed the American economy's roaring ascension, marking the oft-called Roaring Twenties as an era of unprecedented growth and prosperity. However, Mellon's tenure was not without its challenges. With the onset of the Great Depression in 1929, his economic policies, once celebrated, now faced rigorous scrutiny. Critics emerged as the national debt escalated anew, and the 1930s marked another turbulent period for Andrew Mellon. With his reputation suffering following the Wall Street crash, he escaped the States to serve as ambassador to Great Britain in 1932 before returning to private business. His unwavering belief in minimal government intervention and the necessity of economic recessions to purge excesses became contentious topics during this era, and a debate that continues to this day. Meanwhile, the 1940s saw Richard King Mellon, Andrew's brother, additionally emerge as a key figure. A military man, Richard reactivated his service in 1942, overseeing Pennsylvania's Selective Service System and later joining the War Department in Washington, D.C. His contributions, which included establishing banks for the armed forces and promoting "This is the Army," earned him the Distinguished Service Medal, and post-war, he continued his military involvement in the Army Reserves, ultimately attaining the rank of Lieutenant General. But beyond his military endeavors, Richard King Mellon assumed a prominent role in the Mellon dynasty, particularly following Andrew Mellon's passing in 1937. King, as he became known, eerily aligned with Robert De Niro's sinister real-life character in the recent Killers of the Flower Moon film, started at the bottom of the family bank in 1920, working as a messenger and assistant cashier, and later became its president in 1933. Richard King Mellon's post-war period was also characterized by his collaborative efforts with Pittsburgh Mayor David L. Lawrence. Together they tackled urban challenges like flooding, pollution, and blight, initiating large-scale redevelopment projects that redefined Pittsburgh. Indeed, Richard King Mellon's financial clout was instrumental in aligning these projects with new regulatory standards, reshaping the city's fabric. Additionally, Richard and his wife, Constance Prosser Mellon, adopted 4 children: Richard P. Mellon, Seward Prosser Mellon, Constance Barber Mellon, and Cassandra Mellon Milbury, all of whom continued to influence the region. Furthermore, in 1947, Richard's establishment of the Richard King Mellon Foundation marked one of the family's first significant forays into philanthropy. The foundation has awarded over 8,000 grants to more than 1,800 different organizations since its inception. However, it would be another family member, one Paul Mellon, who would live a life that would inextricably tie the name Mellon to philanthropy and art. Paul Mellon, that man who would turn the family name into a word synonymous with philanthropy and art, was born on the 11th of June 1907 in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. The son of Andrew W. Mellon, Paul grew up in an environment of affluence and opportunity, and his early education at the Choate School, a boarding school whose alumni list includes the likes of JFK himself, laid the foundation for Paul Mellon's academic pursuits. Thereafter, Mellon's thirst for knowledge took him to Yale University, where he earned an A.B. in 1929, followed by another degree from Cambridge University in the UK in 1931. However, in a departure from the expected career path in finance, Paul Mellon charted his own course. After briefly working at the family's legendary Mellon Bank, Paul realized his heart was set on art and culture. By 1936, Paul Mellon communicated this passion to his father, already a patron of the National Gallery of Art, and surprisingly gained his financier father's support. This led to the commencement of the gallery's construction in 1937, with Paul playing a critical role. Now, the 1950s saw Paul Mellon's unique leadership style come to the fore. Unlike his father, Andrew, known for his financial and political prowess, Paul focused on the arts, education, and the environment, supporting numerous institutions, including the Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra and London's Tate Galleries, and becoming instrumental in creating the Bollingen Prize for Poetry. Furthermore, Rachel Bunny Mellon, Paul's wife, was no less influential in the cultural and artistic spheres. Born into wealth and marrying into it, Bunny was celebrated for her exquisite taste in art, design, and horticulture. For example, she famously redesigned the White House's Rose Garden at Jacqueline Kennedy's request, and also the East Garden. Her expertise in gardens was matched by her skill in interior design and art collection, working with notable decorators and amassing an impressive collection of art and porcelain. Indeed, Bunny's style was luxurious yet unassuming, reflecting her discerning eye for art, clothes, and interior design. Soon, she became an icon of mid-century style, not just through her personal choices, but through her contributions to the National Gallery of Art, where she and Paul donated over 1,000 European paintings. Furthermore, Bunny Mellon's iconic homes and gardens, spread across the United States, France, and the Caribbean, were well known as an embodiment of the Mellon family's luxurious yet unpretentious taste. Oak Spring Farm in Upperville, Virginia, a sprawling 4,000-acre property, stood out among her estates. Though the interiors of this residence, like many of her homes, remained largely private, they were reputed to be extraordinary, showcasing Mellon's confident and refined style. Another of Mellon's cherished properties was Scallop Path, a historic estate on Cape Cod. Acquired in the early 1970s, Mellon meticulously renovated the 1700s-era main house over several years, and the estate, spanning 7.5 acres and featuring a 7-bedroom main house, a guest house, and exquisitely designed gardens, was shaped by Mellon's creative vision. And in New York City, Mellon's flair for design was exemplified by her 11,000-square-foot, 14-room townhouse in the Upper East Side. This luxurious property, which later sold for $41 million, boasted a private garden and was a showcase of her impeccable taste. Simultaneously, by the 1970s, Paul Mellon had also made a significant mark in academia. His contributions and influence in this sphere highlighted the Mellons' expansive reach. extending beyond art and design to the educational realm. For example, he transformed the Paul Mellon Foundation into the Paul Mellon Centre for Studies in British Art under the Yale Centre for British Art, marking a new chapter in the study of British art and demonstrated Paul's prudent approach to philanthropy and intellectual pursuits. Therefore, together, Paul and Bunny Mellon left a legacy rich in cultural, educational and environmental contributions, each defining their era with a blend of discernment, generosity and a profound love for the arts. However, as the 21st century beckoned, the Mellons, ever the adapters, would be presented with a new set of challenges with the 2008 financial crisis looming, and a family member deciding to enter into the mysterious world of cryptocurrency. In the final decade of the 20th century, the Mellon family started to engage dynamically with the burgeoning tech industry, injecting substantial investments into technology ventures. Indeed, this pivot was a strategic response to the digital revolution sweeping the financial world. First, they renamed Mellon Bank to Mellon Financial Corporation, and then quickly adapted to globalization through the formation of BNY Mellon. This newly minted financial powerhouse, born from the merge of Mellon Family's bank and the Bank of New York, boasted trillions in assets under management and operations across 35 countries by 2023. And among the recent, more trailblazing torchbearers of the family's dynasty, Matthew Taylor Mellon II and Timothy Mellon stand out, each charting distinct courses while upholding the family's legacy. Matthew Taylor Mellon II, a direct descendant of both the founder of Mellon Bank, Judge Thomas Mellon, and the founder of Drexel University, Anthony Joseph Drexel, carved out a niche for himself as a billionaire businessman and entrepreneur. You see, Matthew first made his mark in the fashion industry in 1999, marrying Tamara Mellon, the co-founder of Jimmy Choo. At Jimmy Choo, he was instrumental in developing a men's line, bringing a fresh perspective to the luxury shoe brand. His entrepreneurial journey further expanded in 2000 with the launch of Harry's of London, an innovative venture that blended athletic shoe technology with the traditional aesthetic of men's dress shoes. His fashion ventures continue to evolve with Hanley Mellon, a women's ready-to-wear line co-created with then-wife Nicole Hanley in 2014, reflecting their global travel inspirations. Even more unconventionally, Matthew's interests extended beyond fashion to the burgeoning world of cryptocurrencies. He invested $2 million in CoinApex, a startup incubator focused on Bitcoin-related businesses, demonstrating his interest in the digital currency space. And he played a pivotal role in the Chamber of Digital Commerce as its honorary executive committee chairman, advocating for digital currency advancement. His subsequent investments in cryptocurrency, particularly in Ripple, resulted in a fortune estimated in the billions, highlighting his acumen in identifying and capitalizing on nascent financial trends. And Timothy Mellon, another heir to the Mellon banking fortune, took an equally divergent path, making significant strides in the railroad industry. As the main financier of Guilford Transportation Industries, formed in 1977 and named after his hometown of Guilford, Connecticut, Timothy displayed a strategic approach to business growth. In the 80s, his acquisition strategy extended to purchasing rail lines from Maine to Maryland, marking his influence in the transportation sector. However, Timothy Mellon also engaged in political financing, albeit in a less publicized manner. Despite his reclusive nature and distance from active politics, he emerged as a significant contributor in the 2020 presidential election, donating $10 million to the America First Action Super PAC, aligned with Donald Trump. Thus, the Mellons, while pursuing diverse individual interests, have consistently emphasized having an impact that extends beyond their financial endeavors, with significant contributions to the arts, education, and conservation, thus shaping aspects of American cultural and social landscapes. Africa, the cradle of humanity and that boundless reservoir of some of the Earth's most extensive natural resources. A spellbinding location that presents a panorama of majestic landscapes mingling amongst complex socioeconomic challenges. This vast continent, teeming with varied ecosystems and rich in minerals, has been a focal point of global attention, not solely for its scenic beauty, but also for its deep-seated issues in governance and economy. However, unbeknownst to many, the extraction of Africa's abundant resources has been secretly controlled by a select few old money families, often hidden in plain sight. In particular, one such dynasty has dominated the global diamond industry in an era of unparalleled dominance, controlling an astonishing 85 to 90% of rough diamond distribution for over 100 years, not only in Africa, but worldwide. Indeed, the reign of the Oppenheimer family of South Africa has managed to not only survive, but thrive through the most testing of historical eras. They've amassed billions through 2 world wars, the so-called digital revolution of the 21st century, and they even managed to escape the highly publicized blood diamond controversy of the early 2000s. In today's episode, we tell their full 120-year saga, a striking example of the rapacious, centuries-long fight over resources, political power, and global prestige in the birthplace of our species, as we describe. The Oppenheimers, the old money family that controls Africa. In the historical echelons of global wealth and influence, South Africa's Oppenheimer clan stands near the very top, living out a familial saga intertwined with the gleaming allure of diamonds, the strategic play of high finance and diversification into the most essential goods, including Africa's food supply itself. As of 2024, at the helm of this legendary lineage stands Nicholas F. Oppenheimer, endearingly known as Nicky, who, as of last year, boasts a net worth of a staggering $9.85 billion. And this makes him the 223rd richest person on Earth, according to Bloomberg's Billionaires Index. And surprisingly, this financial prowess marks a notable climb of almost $2 billion from his $7.95 billion net worth just the year before, in 2022. Now, this particularly dramatic ascent in Nicky's fortune traces back to a pivotal moment in 2012, when he sold his family's 40% stake in the famed De Beers Diamond Company to Anglo-American Corporation for a hefty sum of $5.2 billion US. You see, this masterstroke, supplemented by about $390 million in dividends, laid the cornerstone of Nicky Oppenheimer's diverse portfolio, one with a keen eye on commodities and African markets. Furthermore, Nicky's ventures span continents, with private equity investments in Africa, Asia, the US and Europe, managed through Stockdale Street in London and Tana Africa Capital in Johannesburg. Indeed, these strategic investments have yielded lucrative returns, cementing his status as a titan in the realm of global business. And beyond the boardroom, Nicky's interests soar into the skies with Fireblade Aviation, established in 2014. This Johannesburg-based private aviation firm offers executive charter flights and VIP services, boasting a fleet of sophisticated aircraft, catering to an elite clientele. Additionally, in the healthcare sector, Nicky holds a significant 3.37% stake in Integrated Diagnostics Holdings, expanding his influence into consumer healthcare across several countries. Yet Nicky's passion extends to environmental stewardship as well. He owns the Shangani Ranch, a vast 65,000-hectare property celebrated for its conservation efforts, and, along with his son and heir apparent Jonathan Oppenheimer, co-owns Tswalu Kalahari, South Africa's largest private game reserve. But the baton of the Oppenheimer legacy is soon poised to pass to the aforementioned Jonathan Oppenheimer, Nicky's son. Having first honed his skills at N.M. Rothschild & Sons, yes, those Rothschilds, then Anglo-American Corporation, as well as his family's historical flagship company De Beers, Jonathan's prowess in commercial endeavors is unmistakable. Indeed, his tenure as managing director of De Beers Consolidated Mines in South Africa underscored his business acumen. And, extending his global stature, Jonathan joined the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace's Board of Trustees in 2018, demonstrating his political policy savvy. Furthermore, in 2023, Jonathan made a strategic move by taking control of Nigeria's GZ Industries Limited, signaling his ambition to shape the beverage can industry in sub-Saharan Africa. Additionally, Rebecca Oppenheimer, arguably the family's big brain, adds another dimension to the Oppenheimer saga. Raised in Manhattan's Upper West Side and a graduate of Columbia University and Caltech, Rebecca's contributions to astrophysics are well known. Having co-discovered the first brown dwarf and pioneered the study of exoplanetary atmospheres, Rebecca has earned numerous accolades in the scientific community and even owns a palatial 8,462 square foot residence, Merkaba in Washington state, designed to look like a UFO. And, par for the old money course, the Oppenheimers' display of wealth includes Nicky's collection of luxury automobiles, a yacht, a private jet, and properties spanning Johannesburg to Berkshire, alongside the majestic Tswalu Kalahari Private Game Reserve. However, how did a family of bookish scientists and corporate natural resource financiers arrive at multi-billionaire status in the 21st century without needing to go the Musk or Zuckerberg route of leveraging technology to amass an eye-watering fortune? In order to find our answer, we'll have to turn back the hands of time and venture below the smoke-filled industrial skies of 19th century Germany. The first patriarch of what would become the diamond-dominating Oppenheimer family, Ernest Oppenheimer, emerged into the world on the 22nd of May, 1880, in Friedberg, German Empire, to a Jewish family. Born to Edward Oppenheimer, a cigar merchant, and Nanette, née Hirschhorn, Ernest's early life was steeped in the cultural and economic milieu of his time. You see, the 1880s in Friedberg were characterized by a complex social fabric, with Jewish families like the Oppenheimers contributing significantly to the local economy. And while not all cigar merchants amassed great wealth, the Oppenheimer family appeared to have enjoyed a comfortable life. Indicative of the steady prosperity found in such trades, young Ernest embarked on his professional journey at 17, joining Dunkelspuler Company, a London-based diamond brokerage. Soon, his astute understanding of the diamond trade and unerring eye for detail did not go unnoticed, and at 22, he was dispatched to South Africa, a land, even back then, rich with diamond reserves, to act as a buyer for his company in the city of Kimberley. You see, in those days, Kimberley, the destination of his assignment, was far more than a mere mining town. It was a burgeoning economic hub in South Africa, and its significance in the early 20th century cannot be understated. For example, in a move that signaled its advanced infrastructure and modernity, Kimberley lit its streets with electric lights on the 2nd of September 1882. This achievement marked it as the first city in the Southern Hemisphere and the second globally, following Philadelphia in the United States, to adopt this innovation. The city's economic prowess was further underscored by the establishment of the first stock exchange in Africa in 1881, a development that was a clear indicator of Kimberley's central role in the continent's burgeoning economic landscape, particularly in the mining sector. With this in mind, Ernest Oppenheimer would later deftly finesse his way into the growing city's corridors of influence, engaging in its political sphere with the same acumen he applied to business. Indeed, Ernest went so far as to become mayor of Kimberley, South Africa, from 1912 to 1915. And yet, prior to that, for a young man in his mid-20s, such rapid ascent in the diamond industry was impressively uncommon. Although during this period, the Jewish diamond market in South Africa was burgeoning and offered ample opportunities for astute businessmen like Ernest. His otherworldly rise was a reflection of the soon-to-be characteristic foresight of an Oppenheimer. Therefore, from the very beginning of their dominance of Africa's resource markets, it would seem that the family had the Midas touch when it came to economic and political intrigue. Furthermore, during this period, Ernest's personal life took a fortuitous turn in 1906, when he married Mary Lena Pollock from London. This union not only marked a new chapter in his life, but also played a pivotal role in the Oppenheimer family's integration into South African society and the mining community. And the birth of their son, Harry Oppenheimer, in 1912, the same year Father Ernest was elected mayor, set the stage for the continuation of the family's influence in the diamond industry. Harry would later follow in his father's footsteps, taking the helm of De Beers. But first, the Oppenheimers would have to demonstrate to themselves and the world if they could not only survive, but thrive through coming back-to-back world wars that would change everything. In the aftermath of World War I, South Africa found itself in a geopolitical maelstrom. This period marked the emergence of Ernest Oppenheimer, a journey into the sparkling realm of African gems, grabbed not merely by chance, but as a strategic move shaped by the tumultuous global and local politics of the time. The year 1917 saw Oppenheimer, in partnership with William Lincoln Honnold, an American engineer of considerable repute, launch the Anglo-American Corporation. This venture, which would soon become a cornerstone in the diamond industry, was significantly backed by none other than the legendary financier and political powerhouse J.P. Morgan. You see, Morgan's interest in Africa, and particularly in its diamond mines, was rooted in a strategic vision. Recognizing the continent's untapped wealth and the growing global demand for diamonds, Morgan saw an opportunity to expand his multi-billion-dollar financial empire into new, resource-rich territories. And 2 years after its inception, Oppenheimer and Morgan's Anglo-American made a bold move by purchasing diamond mines in Southwest Africa. This was not just a business transaction, it was a direct challenge to the De Beers diamond monopoly, a company that had long held an unshakable grip on the diamond market. At this point, Anglo-American, with an initial capital of £1 million, had established a solid financial foundation, drawing investments from the United States, England, and South Africa. Furthermore, around this same time, in 1921, Ernest was knighted by King George V of England for his services during World War I. You see, he played a significant role in supporting the war effort, which included helping to establish the Kimberley Regiment and organizing the labor required to build a railway line from Upington in the Northern Cape to the Namibian border. His contributions to the British war effort were thus recognized with the honor of knighthood, despite the challenges he faced due to anti-German sentiment at the time, as he was of German origin. Leveraging this newly minted influence, Ernest ventured further into the political arena, securing a seat in the South African House of Assembly in 1924 as the member for Kimberley, a position he held until 1938. However, the year 1927 marked Oppenheimer's pièce de résistance when he took control of his main competitor, the late Cecil Rhodes' De Beers empire, laying the groundwork for a global monopoly over the diamond trade, and by 1929 he had ascended to the chairmanship of De Beers. His strategy was then clear: establish market monopolies, control diamond pricing and supply channels, and create an artificial scarcity to keep prices soaring. But World War II presented new challenges and opportunities for Oppenheimer and De Beers. Amidst global conflict, accusations surfaced against Oppenheimer for withholding industrial diamonds crucial for the US war effort. However, his strategic foresight led to the establishment of diamond-cutting factories in South Africa, ensuring a steady supply of diamonds even as Europe was engulfed in war. In the effervescent post-World War II era, Oppenheimer's De Beers, already a titan in the diamond industry, branched out, injecting its burgeoning profits into the development of gold mines across South Africa. And this wasn't the end of its expansionist zeal. De Beers soon dipped its toes into industries as varied as platinum, steel, and even paper products. However, Oppenheimer's tenure wasn't without its share of controversies, and one significant issue was price fixing. You see, in the 1930s, Ernest maneuvered De Beers into a formidable global cartel, a strategy that not only revived the diamond industry, but also set a precedent that lasted well beyond his time. His crafty price manipulation practices were so effective that they drew the attention of legal authorities, leading to a hefty $10 million fine for De Beers in an Ohio court. Another point of contention was Oppenheimer's adherence to antitrust principles, in other words, forming a monopoly. Indeed, De Beers' operations were seen as a direct contravention of US antitrust laws, specifically the Sherman Act and Clayton Act, which were designed to ensure competition and protect consumer welfare. By eliminating competition and controlling the diamond supply, De Beers was able to keep prices artificially high, which ultimately harmed consumer welfare. To combat these contentious issues, Ernest Oppenheimer began to engage in an intensely proactive philanthropic strategy. Indeed, his donations spanned many sectors, stretching from the establishment of an engineering department at the University of Stellenbosch to funding a centre for colonial research at Oxford University. However, Ernest Oppenheimer's philanthropic and economic ventures, as grand as they were, merely set the stage for what was to come. Our story now turns to meet his son, Harry Oppenheimer, where a tempest of wealth, power and personal drama awaits, promising to arguably eclipse even his own father's monumental legacy. Harry Frederick Oppenheimer, born in Kimberley, South Africa, on the 28th of October 1908, was seemingly preordained for a vital role in his family's empire. Following his graduation from the esteemed University of Oxford in England, Harry Oppenheimer returned to South Africa and joined the ranks of his father's renowned company, Anglo-American. His corporate progression, however, was temporarily interrupted by World War II, during which he served in the South African Corps in North Africa. In the post-war era, Harry Oppenheimer was drawn into the realm of politics. From 1948 to 1957, he represented the United Party as a member of the South African Parliament, where he became known for his strong opposition to the apartheid regime. You see, this period in South African history was deeply affected by the institutionalization of apartheid, a system of racial segregation and discrimination. The pro-apartheid National Party, victorious in the 1948 elections, had by then enacted laws such as the Population Registration Act of 1950, which categorized South Africans by race and implemented strict segregation through various acts. During his time in Parliament, Harry Oppenheimer, as a member of the opposition, emerged as a notable figure against the regime. As a member of Parliament for the United Party, the main opposition to the National Party's apartheid policies, he advocated for a more equal treatment of black South Africans. However, his approach, while advocating for better conditions, did not extend to full equality for all races. On one hand, Oppenheimer's efforts were aimed at enhancing the lives of black urban residents and fostering the development of a property-owning black middle class, an approach seen as a step towards an orderly political transition. On the other hand, purposefully aligning himself with the legacy of British colonialist and businessman Cecil Rhodes, Harry expressed concerns about the potential risks to civilization he associated with what Oppenheimer referred to as primitive tribesmen. This duality in his views reflected the complexities of his position and the era's socio-political landscape. However, by 1957, the family business called. Following his father's demise that year, Harry relinquished his political ambitions to spearhead both Anglo-American and De Beers. And indeed, De Beers, by then a titan in diamond and mineral supply, was poised for a transformation under his aegis. At De Beers, Harry Oppenheimer was more than a mere executive. He was a visionary. He revolutionized the diamond industry with ingenious marketing tactics, paving the way for the modern connotation of diamonds as enduring emblems of love and commitment, and a girl's best friend. Naturally, his strategy wasn't just effective, it was transformative, shaping global perceptions that persist today. And under his leadership, De Beers' footprint expanded dramatically, reaching Canada, Australia, Malaysia, Portugal, Zambia, and Tanzania. This expansion was not just a growth strategy, but a statement of intent, firmly planting De Beers on the global stage. However, although he had formally left politics years before, Harry's political influence continued to hold sway. He seamlessly transitioned to a role behind the scenes, supporting the Progressive Party as its chief financial benefactor, thus continuing to shape the political landscape without the limelight of office. By the time the 1980s dawned, Oppenheimer had climbed the echelons of wealth, ranking among the world's richest. His fortune, a mosaic of gold, diamonds, and various minerals, was a testament to his business acumen. As the chairman of both the Anglo-American Corporation and De Beers Consolidated Mines, he didn't just oversee operations, he expanded their global footprint, so much so that, by the end of the decade, his empire shockingly contributed to a full quarter of South Africa's GDP. As his unparalleled career came to a close, Harry had set the stage for his son, Nicky Oppenheimer, to take the reins and steer the family legacy through a world of evolving challenges and opportunities. In the dynamic decade of the 1990s, the Oppenheimer family, with Nicholas "Nicky" Oppenheimer at the helm, maintained their stronghold over the diamond industry. Their control of De Beers since the late 1920s had transformed diamonds into emblems of luxury and desire. Yet this reign was not without its challenges, and in 1995, the family yet again found themselves embroiled in controversy. Critics accused them of monopolistic practices, alleging that their grip over De Beers and its exclusive contracts allowed them to skew the diamond market. Thus, as the 21st century unfolded, the Oppenheimers pivoted, broadening their business interests beyond the glint of diamonds. They ventured into various African sectors, including healthcare, agriculture, media, and retail. This strategic diversification was seen as a savvy move to safeguard the family's financial prominence and influence, especially as they gradually stepped back from the diamond sphere. However, the new millennium further brought intensified scrutiny to the Oppenheimer's diamond endeavors. Criticisms centered around environmental and ethical concerns, gaining momentum with cultural references that cast a spotlight on the darker aspects of diamond mining. One such reference was the Oscar-nominated 2006 film Blood Diamond, starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Set amidst the Sierra Leone Civil War, the movie graphically depicted the harrowing realities of diamond mining, starkly portraying the industry's impact on local communities and the environment, heightened consumer consciousness about the moral complexities of the trade. Simultaneously, controversial rapper Kanye West's 2005 song Diamonds from Sierra Leone echoed similar themes, illuminating the grim abuses of Sierra Leone's diamond mines and adding momentum in pop culture to speaking out against the monopolistic diamond trade. Subsequently, both the film and the song were instrumental in elevating public awareness of the ethical dilemmas in diamond mining, leading to increased scrutiny, including those of companies under the Oppenheimer umbrella. This cultural and ethical awakening marked a significant shift in how the world viewed the glittering allure of diamonds, casting a shadow on the practices that brought them to market. Then, in 2012, the diamond industry witnessed a pivotal moment as the Oppenheimer family relinquished their 40% stake in De Beers to Anglo American. This deal, valued at over $5 billion, saw the Oppenheimers' storied 80-year reign at De Beers come to a close. However, as previously noted, Anglo American itself was founded by an Oppenheimer family member, thus raising questions of if the lineage has really ever left the trade. Anglo American thus upped its share in De Beers to a dominant 85%, heralding a new era in the glittering world of diamonds. And this transaction was more than a mere business deal. It signaled a strategic pivot for the Oppenheimer family. With a newfound liquidity, the family, already known for its diverse investments, was now poised to broaden its portfolio across various sectors. Thus, in an intriguing turn of events, the Oppenheimers entered Nigeria's fast food scene in 2015. This move, tapping into a market expanding by 4% annually, highlighted their agility in recognizing burgeoning opportunities. And the family's foray into this sector resonated with Nigeria's growing appetite for fine dining and quick service. 2017 marked a further strategic move in this arena by the Oppenheimers in Nigeria with the acquisition of a majority stake in GZ Industries, a leading aluminium can manufacturer. GZ Industries, boasting an annual production of 3 billion cans, became a cornerstone in the Oppenheimers' investment portfolio, further entrenching their influence in Africa's largest economy. Fast forward to 2023, and the Oppenheimers' investments in Nigeria's food and beverage packaging sectors have significantly shaped the market dynamics. Their stake in GZ Industries has propelled the company to control a substantial portion of Nigeria's drinks can market. Thus, by the 2020s, the Oppenheimer dynasty has firmly established its complex and multifaceted legacy, stretching from diamonds and precious gems to aluminum. Their story reflects what happens when one family permanently embeds itself in the economic and political structures of Africa's vast natural resources, for better or for worse. In the intricate web of American political history, the phenomenon of presidential families is a perennial topic of both intrigue and, at times, controversy. Placed beside dynastic names like Roosevelt, Kennedy, and Adams, the Bush family carves its unique niche, perhaps more contentious than its predecessors. Indeed, unlike the direct lineage of power seen in other 20th century dynasties, where the Roosevelts and Kennedys, being among America's richest families at the time, played a pivotal role, the Bushes charted a different course. Their ascent from old money to the pinnacle of American politics wasn't a straightforward tale of inheritance or predestined power. Instead, it was a saga marked by astute political maneuvering and an uncanny knack for being at the right place at the right time. In today's episode, we detail how the story of the Bush family is not just about reaching the zenith of political influence, it encapsulates the dual American ethos of entrepreneurship and self-appointed public duty. Their journey, mired in debate and discussion, offers a fascinating insight into the dynamics of power and privilege in the United States. So join us for the ride as we describe how the Bush family went from old money to presidents. Emerging from Europe in the 1600s, the Bush family name weaves through the fabric of history, marking not only a journey of political prominence, but also a richly layered ancestral heritage. This epic tale, steeped in tradition and crossing oceans, echoes the transformative journey of a family that would come to leave an unforgettable mark on American leadership and culture. Now, the Bush family's European lineage primarily encompasses English and German descent. Samuel Bush, born in 1647, marked the beginning of the family's American saga. And extensive research by British genealogist Roger Power has even linked the Bushes to the British royal family. Notably, George H.W. Bush, the 41st President of the United States, is a 13th cousin twice removed of our late Queen Elizabeth II. And this royal connection extends to various historical figures, including King Henry VII, Charles II's mistress, Barbara Villiers, and Mary, the younger sister of Henry VIII. But the Bush family's American journey gained momentum in the mid-19th century. Specifically, among the first Bush ancestors in the USA was George Washington Bush, a mixed-race pioneer and one of the earliest permanent settlers in the Washington Territory. In 1845, he played a crucial role in the early development of what is now Washington State, and that particular George Bush's marriage to Isabella James, of German descent, further diversified the family's heritage. Together they had 9 sons, 6 of whom reached adulthood, and settled at Fort Vancouver, Washington. Then, George Bush's entrepreneurial spirit was evident as he built the region's first grist mill and sawmill, establishing a flourishing farm known as Bush Prairie. And by the late 1800s, the Bush family had begun to amass considerable wealth. Next, Samuel Prescott Bush, a minister's son, was instrumental in establishing the family's fortune. He rose from an apprenticeship to become the president of Buckeye Steel Castings Company, the 3rd largest steel coupler producer in the US at the turn of the century. His tenure at Buckeye Steel Castings, once controlled by Frank Rockefeller, brother of John D. Rockefeller, marked a significant step in the family's ascent to prominence. And Samuel Prescott Bush's influence extended beyond his industrial endeavors. He co-founded the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, presided over the Ohio Manufacturing Association, and served on the board of the Federal Reserve Bank of Cleveland. Appointed to Herbert Hoover's President's Committee for Unemployment Relief, he forged an even stronger relationship with the Rockefeller family, further cementing the Bush family's status in American history. Therefore, this legacy of wealth accumulation through investment banking and wartime business ventures has been a hallmark of the Bush family. Their business interests have spanned from Halliburton to Merrill Lynch, and they have famously even ventured into Major League sports team ownership. So we've covered their initial immigration to the United States and the seeds of their legendary wealth. However, now it's time to get into the good stuff. How exactly did this admittedly shrewd set of entrepreneurs go from a simple set of moneymakers to a political dynasty that could rival names like Roosevelt, Adams, and Kennedy in importance? To answer that, we must take a journey to the flat, temperate lands of the great state of Ohio in the late 19th century. And there we'll meet a child named Prescott. Prescott Sheldon Bush, born on the 15th of May, 1895 in Columbus, Ohio, emerged from an already formidable brood in the chronicles of American soft power. His parents, Samuel Prescott Bush and Flora Sheldon Bush, provided him with a nurturing environment that fostered an appreciation for education and sports. Indeed, Prescott was one of 5 children, showcasing his athletic prowess at St. George's School in Rhode Island and later at Yale University, where he excelled in baseball and golf, standing an impressive 6 feet 4 inches tall. Then, the outbreak of World War I in 1917 marked a pivotal moment in Prescott Bush's life. As a student at Yale, he embraced his patriotic duty by accepting an officer's commission, serving as a field artillery captain in the Connecticut National Guard. His military experience was diverse, including intelligence training in Verdun and a stint with a team of French officers. The Meuse-Argonne offensive saw him alternating between intelligence and artillery roles, experiences that profoundly shaped his sense of duty and commitment to his country. Post-war life saw Prescott Bush returning to a civilian existence, gradually immersing himself in local politics. At the time, he and his wife began raising what would become a family of 5 children: Prescott Jr., George H.W., more on him later, Jonathan William, or Bucky, and Nancy. And Father Prescott's military service ingrained a deep sense of honor and duty, qualities that later influenced his political ambitions. Furthermore, Prescott Bush's post-military career was marked by a series of strategic moves in the business world. Starting in 1919 with the Simmons Hardware Company in St. Louis, Missouri, he then transitioned to Columbus, Ohio, working for the Hupp Products Company. His journey led him to Massachusetts, where he became the president of sales for Stedman Products. In 1927, a significant career shift occurred when he joined W.A. Harriman and Company, a bank later merged with Brown Brothers. Here, Bush honed his investment management and advisory skills, attracting high-profile clients, including the Harrimans themselves. Controversy, however, was not far from Prescott Bush's storied career. In July 2007, Harper's Magazine published an article by attorney Scott Horton, which highlighted Prescott Bush's alleged involvement in the 1934 business plot. This plan aimed to leverage retired Marine Corps Major General Smedley Butler in a scheme to overthrow President Franklin D. Roosevelt. The plot, however, did not materialize, and Prescott Bush's business dealings extended to his role as a founder and director of the Union Banking Corporation, or the UBC, an investment bank that was a clearinghouse for assets and enterprises held by Fritz Thyssen, a German steel magnate and early Nazi supporter. In 1942, during World War II, the US government seized the bank under the Trading with the Enemy Act, amidst suspicions of holding gold for Nazi leaders. Although these allegations were disproved, Bush's connection with Thyssen and his role in UBC, as reported by some sources, remained a controversial aspect of his legacy. Then, in the 1950s, Prescott Bush, by then already a figure of considerable influence, pivoted towards the political sphere. Aligning himself with the Republican Party, his initial foray into politics faced a setback in 1950, but he secured a seat in the Senate 2 years later. As a senator, Bush was a vocal advocate of President Dwight D. Eisenhower's policies, and he played a notable role in the Interstate Highway Program, where he championed the principle of apportionment based on relative need, a policy adopted in 1956. And beyond infrastructure, Bush was actively engaged in social issues. He contributed to the American Birth Control League as early as 1942 and was instrumental in the first nationwide campaign of Planned Parenthood in 1947. And his commitment to education and racial equality was evident in his role as the chairman of the Connecticut branch of the United Negro College Fund in 1951. However, even as he was gaining immense power in the U.S. Senate, Prescott Bush could perhaps not imagine what the next generation of men bearing his name would do to further the power and prestige of a lineage that had by then already been synonymous with seizing the reins of influence and notoriety. Future President, Vice President, and CIA Director George Herbert Walker Bush, in his adolescent years, attended Phillips Academy, Andover, a prestigious boarding school in Massachusetts. There, he distinguished himself as a compassionate and accomplished student, often standing up for younger students in an environment where bullying was prevalent. His leadership qualities shone through as he became the senior class president and captained both the baseball and soccer teams, while also engaging in various clubs. And his time at Andover culminated on his 18th birthday in 1942, the same day he enlisted in the United States Navy, marking the start of a significant chapter in his life. Then, during World War II, from 1942 to 1945, Bush served as a naval aviator. The attack on Pearl Harbor spurred his decision to join the Navy and train as an aviator. After pre-flight training at the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, he earned his commission as an ensign and embarked on 58 combat missions. His military tenure was notable, including a harrowing incident where he had to bail out of his burning plane near the Bonin Islands. And for his valor, he received the Distinguished Flying Cross, 3 Air Medals, and the Presidential Unit Citation, awarded to the USS San Jacinto crew. Next, George H.W. Bush's personal life took a significant turn in 1945 when he married Barbara Pierce. They first met during the Christmas holidays in 1941 at a country club dance in Greenwich. And their engagement, which occurred before George departed for World War II, was sealed with a sapphire ring from his aunt. After surviving his plane being shot down in 1944, George returned to the US on Christmas Eve, and married Barbara just 2 weeks later at the First Presbyterian Church in Rye, New York. Their marriage spanned 73 years and saw the birth of 6 children: George Walker, better known as George W., or even just W., Robin, John Ellis, or Jeb, Neil, Marvin, and Dorothy, or Doro. The Bushes' union, enduring through various life challenges, became the longest of any presidential couple in history. Now, George H.W. Bush's political journey began in the 1960s and 1970s. His first notable political role was as chairman of Texas's Harris County Republican Party in 1963. He then served 2 terms as a U.S. representative from Texas's 7th District, starting in 1966. Despite setbacks in Senate races, his political ascent continued with appointments to significant roles, including U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. However, his tenure as the Director of Central Intelligence for the CIA in 1976 was mired in controversy. His appointment by the Ford administration during a period of intense scrutiny of the CIA raised concerns among critics like Senator Frank Church about Bush's potential to protect presidential interests. Nevertheless, Bush's time as director was marked by his efforts to boost morale and refocus the agency, earning him recognition as a capable leader. Then, George H.W. Bush's selection as Ronald Reagan's vice president was a strategic decision, balancing Reagan's ticket with a moderate figure like Bush. Reagan, perceived as lacking in foreign affairs expertise, saw value in Bush's extensive experience in the field. However, Bush's selection came at the last moment, influenced by a mix of chance and behind-the-scenes maneuvering. And as vice president, Bush played a key role in domestic areas such as federal deregulation and anti-drug programs, and also represented the U.S. in numerous foreign countries. Despite initial struggles to establish a productive working relationship with President Reagan, Bush eventually won his loyalty, leading to their landslide re-election in 1984. Next, Bush's presidential campaign was multifaceted. With a background in domestic politics and foreign affairs, plus 8 years as vice president, he was well prepared. His campaign, launched in October 1987, focused on continuing Reagan's legacy, with stances against flag burning and abortion and support for free trade and community volunteerism. Despite early setbacks like losing the Iowa caucus and battling an image of being wimpy, Bush rebounded strongly, winning the New Hampshire primary and dominating the Super Tuesday races. The campaign against Democratic nominee Michael Dukakis was aggressive, with the controversial Willie Horton ad and the revolving door spot, painting Dukakis as extremely liberal and soft on crime. These strategies were pivotal in shaping public perception and contributed significantly to Bush's victory. Then, as the 41st President of the United States, Bush's tenure was marked by significant domestic and international events and controversies. He signed the Americans with Disabilities Act of 1990 and the Clean Air Act amendments, and his reliance on veto power and a challenging relationship with a Democrat-controlled Congress, particularly with Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell, were notable aspects of his presidency. Internationally, Bush's presidency also coincided with the end of the Cold War and the fall of the Berlin Wall. He supported Soviet President Mikhail Gorbachev and led the U.S. in the First Gulf War. Although his decision to halt the invasion of Iraq and leave Saddam Hussein in power was contentious. Despite high approval ratings, particularly post-Gulf War, Bush's perceived inattention to domestic issues and breaking the No New Taxes pledge contributed to his defeat in the 1992 presidential election. That year began with his approval rating falling below majority for the first time, further declining amid the presidential primaries. However, little did Father H.W. know that the story of a 2-term Bush presidency was well on its way. It just wouldn't be with Daddy at the helm. George W. Bush was born on the 6th of July, 1946, in New Haven, Connecticut, and his early years were overshadowed by the loss of his sister, Robin, to leukemia, a tragedy that deeply affected him and strengthened his bond with his mother. At Yale University, Bush pursued a history degree, graduating in 1968 amidst a backdrop of controversy. His acceptance into the Texas Air National Guard, especially with a minimal score on a pilot aptitude test and during the height of the Vietnam War, raised eyebrows, with many speculating that his father's political influence as a congressman played a role in this decision. and Bush's early adulthood was famously marked by excessive drinking, which he later acknowledged as problematic, though he never identified as an alcoholic. Reportedly, his drinking habits bordered on binge drinking, occasionally leading to offensive behavior. However, a pivotal change occurred in the 1970s, culminating in his decision to embrace sobriety following a particularly wild celebration of his 40th birthday in 1986. And in 1977, George W. Bush's life took a positive turn with his marriage to Laura Welch, a former teacher and librarian. Shortly thereafter, the couple welcomed twin daughters, Jenna and Barbara, in 1981. Notably, Laura Bush's influence extended to her husband's political career. As First Lady of Texas and then the United States, she championed education, healthcare, and human rights, advocating for the well-intentioned, if controversial, No Child Left Behind Act and the Reading First program. She also founded the National Book Festival and worked with UNESCO on global literacy programs. Now, George W. Bush's political journey began in earnest in 1994 when he ran for governor of Texas against Ann Richards. Despite the intense campaign and high favorability ratings for both candidates, Bush won with 53% of the vote. As governor, he was known for his commitment to bipartisanship and compassionate conservatism, focusing on principles like limited government and personal responsibility. His tenure saw significant achievements, including increased education spending and reforms that linked teacher salaries and promotions to student performance on standardized tests. However, his governorship wasn't without controversy. Bush faced scrutiny for Texas's high use of capital punishment and for education reforms that heavily relied on testing and school report cards. His tort reform measures also sparked debate. Bush's effective governance in Texas led to his re-election in 1998, making him the first governor in Texas history to be elected to consecutive four-year terms. His success in Texas subsequently brought him national attention from the Republican Party, culminating in his nomination as their presidential candidate in 2000. Now, the decision for George W. Bush to run for the presidency in 2000 was deeply rooted in family history and his personal political journey. As the eldest son of former President George H.W. Bush, he had been actively involved in his father's political campaigns, including the 1992 re-election bid. However, the loss of his father in the 1992 election set the stage for George W. Bush to consider his own political aspirations, a decision that solidified during his second inauguration as Texas governor. The 2000 presidential campaign, pitting Texas Governor Bush against Vice President Al Gore, quickly became one of the most disputed in U.S. history. With Gore winning the popular vote, but the electoral outcome hinging on Florida's 25 votes, the nation watched as a slender Bush lead triggered a recount. The Supreme Court's 5-4 decision to halt the recount, citing time constraints to meet the electoral certification deadline, effectively handed the presidency to Bush. This outcome sparked significant controversy, casting doubts on Bush's legitimacy and tarnishing the Supreme Court's reputation. And then, George W. Bush's presidency was a period marked by major events and deep divisions. The 9/11 terrorist attacks, which resulted in nearly 3,000 American deaths, transformed Bush into a wartime president, with his initial response garnering overwhelming public approval. However, his administration's subsequent actions, particularly the invasion of Iraq, attracted intense scrutiny. The Iraq War, justified by the perceived threat from Saddam Hussein, initially had notable support, but later became a point of deep division. The war's human and financial costs, including the loss of over 200,000 Iraqi lives and the displacement of millions, led to widespread criticism. Even Bush himself later acknowledged his administration's errors in his 2010 memoir, Decision Points. And domestically, Bush's policies were equally contentious. His 2001 and 2003 tax cuts significantly reduced federal revenue, while his vision of an ownership society aimed to promote personal responsibility in various aspects of American life. Bush's speaking style, often perceived as folksy or downright pedantic, and the tight structure of his administration, with influential figures like Vice President Dick Cheney and Chief of Staff Andy Card, were distinctive features of his presidency. However, regardless of the sometimes infamous, sometimes glorious nature of George W. Bush's time as president, he without a doubt catapulted the family name to unseen heights. Yet, There were many, many more Bushes at work behind the scenes, bolstering the social power and political muscle of the family. At the same time, W was in office. With his father and elder brother both serving as US presidents, John Ellis Jeb Bush, born in 1953, had to carve out his own path. After graduating from the University of Texas, he ventured into banking and later real estate development in Florida, and his political ascent culminated in his election as Florida's governor in 1999. Notably, Jeb Bush was a proponent of immigration reform and even sought the Republican presidential nomination in 2016. And though his presidential bid was unsuccessful, Jeb's political endeavors have significantly contributed to the Bush family's legacy, while William Hall Billy Bush, born in 1971, diverged from the family's political trajectory by choosing a career in entertainment. Known for his work on syndicated entertainment news shows, Billy has maintained an apolitical stance, focusing on his individual career in the entertainment industry. This career choice has diversified the Bush family's public image, extending their influence beyond the realm of politics. But both Jeb and Billy have faced their own sets of challenges and controversies. Billy Bush faced a personal scandal a bit later involving Donald Trump and the infamous locker room talk conversation, which drew significant media attention. And Jeb Bush's 2016 presidential campaign struggled to gain traction, leading to his withdrawal after the South Carolina Republican primary. Other members of the Bush family, active in various sectors, include Dorothy Bush Koch and Neil Bush. Dorothy, known as Doro, is an author and philanthropist, contributing to health and wellness initiatives and literacy programs, and Neil Bush is a businessman and chairs several foundations, including those focused on literacy and US-China relations. Furthermore, in the 2010s, the overall Bush family, particularly George H.W. Bush and George W. Bush, experienced notable shifts in public perception. George H.W. Bush, the 41st US president, increasingly came to be regarded as an elder statesman. His foreign policy, in retrospect, garnered appreciation as an exemplar of American leadership, especially when contrasted with the challenges faced by his son and successors. Despite not securing a second presidential term, George H.W. Bush's reputation saw a resurgence, with recognition of his pragmatic and results-driven leadership approach. George W. Bush encountered a more intricate public image during this time. His presidency, marked by significant controversy, often drew criticism for his economic policies, communication skills, foreign policy, and perceived intelligence. However, post-presidency, his public favorability saw an upswing. By 2013, nearly half of Americans viewed him positively, perhaps reflecting his tenure as being less divisive than more recent administrations, marking a considerable improvement from the low approval ratings he experienced upon leaving office in 2009. In his life after the presidency, George W. Bush embraced painting of all things, finding it both relaxing and inspiring. He published Portraits of Courage, a book featuring his paintings that pay tribute to military veterans, showcasing a more personal and calming aspect of the former president. But then, the passing of George H.W. Bush on the 30th of November 2018 profoundly affected the Bush family and their public standing. George H.W. Bush's death also significantly impacted the family's public legacy. He was celebrated for his commitment to his country and his 1,000 Points of Light initiative, inspiring generations of Americans and earning praise from global leaders, and his life and service have left a unique impact on the Bush family and on American public life. Thus, as the 2020s unfold, the Bush family's legacy continues to evolve. Though their political clout appears to be diminishing, their influence has stretched across American politics, media, sports, entertainment, and business for generations. Therefore, indeed, the Bush family's impact on American society and politics remains significant, and their legacy is likely to be a subject of ongoing discussion and analysis in the future. Cleveland, Ohio, on the brink of the 19th century. A collage of hardy souls, undaunted dreams, and fierce determination. It's here, treading through the thunder of steel on rail and the symphony of industry piercing the crisp Midwestern sky, where our story begins. We meet a young John D. Rockefeller, a man not born great, but upon whom greatness would be bestowed by the trials of life. Young John's eyes reflect an old soul, a wisdom gifted by his devout mother, Eliza Davison, a pillar of steadfast religious faith. she has imparted in her son the invaluable lessons of charity, frugality, and financial stewardship. In the muted glow of candlelight, John faithfully absorbed these lessons, his handwritten ledger of daily expenditures a constant companion. However, even as he wrote, his father's shadow filled the room. His father, William Avery Rockefeller, a man with a chameleon-like charm and a penchant for high stakes, peddled his miracle potions. Blending a mix of naive hope and snake oil, he sold dreams to the desperate and unsuspecting. This tension, an intricate waltz between integrity and deception, forms the foundation of the Rockefeller family's destiny. Each moment adds a new layer of resolve. The quiet diligence from a mother's teachings and the ruthless business cunning kindled by a father's guile. Embark with us on this journey from the freshly minted wealth of the new money Rockefellers to the prestigious old money dynasty John would build, as we describe. How the Rockefeller family went from new money to old money. Our saga begins in New York State, where our pivotal protagonist, John D. Rockefeller, first experienced life's trials and triumphs. Raised by his devout Baptist mother, Eliza Davison, Rockefeller learned the virtues of charity, frugality, and the effective management of money from an early age. This foundational training would later become the bedrock of his extraordinary business acumen. However, to fully comprehend the twists and turns of this familial odyssey from rags to riches, we must introduce an almost Dickensian character, John D's father, William Avery Rockefeller. Far from the righteous path his wife trod, William Avery lived a life of flamboyant ruses. As a traveling salesman, he peddled miracle potions with the grand promise of healing any affliction, from insignificant ailments to terminal diseases. Astoundingly, the key ingredient of these elixirs was petroleum, a substance that, unbeknownst to young John, would power his future, paving his way towards becoming America's first billionaire. William Avery, however, bore a less than reputable reputation. He was a man of questionable integrity, dabbling in horse thievery, and habitually tangling with the law. His unorthodox antics eventually led to a forced relocation to Cleveland, Ohio, a move that uprooted young Rockefeller from his childhood home in upstate New York. Eliza Rockefeller, a figure of steadfast faith and resilience, stood as the counterpoint to William Avery's volatile lifestyle. Eliza's devout religiosity played a significant role in shaping young John D. Rockefeller's worldview, infusing his business strategies with a sense of moral responsibility and ethical diligence that would remain with him throughout his life. Now, despite William Avery's dubious character, he surprisingly harbored a staunch belief in the power of education. As such, he enrolled John D. and his brother William at Cleveland's Central High School, the country's first free public high school west of the Allegheny Mountains. This experience instilled a strong sense of independence in John D., particularly during his father's frequent, lengthy absences. And remarkably, these absences were not without their silver lining. When he did indeed return, William Avery's penchant for deception extended to his own son, with John D's father himself once bragging, "I cheat my boys every chance I get. I want to make 'em sharp." This unconventional paternal approach, however, inadvertently honed Rockefeller's business instincts. His early exposure to his father's swindles molded him into a shrewd negotiator, a business hawk with an eagle eye for spotting potential pitfalls and deceptive maneuvers in the commercial arena. The motherly figure of Eliza Davison, however, was the enduring, guiding beacon in John D's life. Over the course of his life, he progressively distanced himself from his father, while his mother's influence and memory only amplified. Her teachings left an indelible mark on Rockefeller, who would go on to recall, "From the beginning, I was trained to work, to save, and to give." Upon completion of his education, Rockefeller, now seasoned with both life and business experience, found his heart's delight in his high school sweetheart, Laura Spellman, marking the close of one eventful chapter and the dawn of another in his remarkable journey. John D. Rockefeller's business journey, one marked by scrupulous financial acumen and towering ambition, began in September 1855, when at just 16 he entered the business world as an assistant bookkeeper for a small produce commission firm, Hewitt and Tuttle in Cleveland. Even then, his meticulous nature shone through, keeping detailed ledgers that accounted for every cent in his possession. A staunch advocate of charity, Rockefeller adhered to the concept of tithing from his earliest days of earning income for himself, committing 10% of his earnings to charitable causes. In 1859, Rockefeller partnered with Morris B. Clark, launching a produce commission business. They raised $4,000, more than $100,000 in today's dollars, a sizable capital for the time. The Civil War period proved lucrative, as the Union Army's demand for supplies soared. However, it was towards the end of the conflict, as the prospect of wartime profits faded, that Rockefeller and Clark turned their attention towards oil refining. The true turning point came in 1866, when John's brother, William Rockefeller Jr., built another refinery in Cleveland, pulling John into the partnership. In 1867, Henry Morrison Flagler joined them, establishing Rockefeller, Andrews and Flagler, which rapidly grew to be the world's largest oil refinery. This operation laid the foundation for Standard Oil, officially formed on January 10, 1870, which embarked on an aggressive campaign to consolidate the oil market. Known as the Cleveland Conquest or the Cleveland Massacre, Standard Oil in less than 4 months in 1872 absorbed 22 of its 26 Cleveland competitors. By 1880, Standard Oil controlled approximately 90% of all oil refineries and pipelines in the United States, allowing Rockefeller to effectively dictate the entire industry's pace and direction. However, Rockefeller's strategies were not without benefits for the public. Before 1870, only the affluent could afford oil light, provided by expensive whale oil. However, in the following decade, thanks to the economies of scale realized by Standard Oil, kerosene became widely accessible to the working and middle classes. Yet these business practices, including underselling, differential pricing, and secret transportation rebates, also invited controversy. And by 1880, Standard Oil was reported by the media as the most cruel, impudent, pitiless, and grasping monopoly that ever fastened upon a country. The intense criticism led to the creation of the Standard Oil Trust in 1882, a corporation of corporations, to centralize Rockefeller's holdings, which further stirred public suspicion. Despite these challenges, Standard Oil stood resilient, consistently making profits year after year, achieving an aura of invincibility and unparalleled wealth. Ida Tarbell, a journalist, would ultimately lead a movement to challenge this behemoth. Her meticulous investigation, culminating in a series of damning articles, exposed Standard Oil's ruthless tactics and ultimately contributed to the dissolution of Standard Oil as a monopoly, leading to the Clayton Antitrust Act. Without fully throwing in the towel, Rockefeller started looking at his transition into retirement while still seeking to preserve his wealth and transform his new money into the more enduring old money. He diversified his investments and launched the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913 with an initial donation of $100 million, broadening his legacy beyond oil and industry, highlighting his commitment to philanthropy. However, his rise from a new money tycoon to an old money patriarch was marred by personal challenges and public scorn, with some speculating that the relentless scrutiny caused Rockefeller to develop alopecia. Despite these obstacles, the name Rockefeller had a journey from poverty to the patriarch of one of America's most powerful families that was only just beginning as he passed control of his dynasty to the next generation. Now, John D. Rockefeller was not merely an astute businessman, he was also an ardent practitioner of old money principles, such as long-term financial planning, privacy, understated elegance, philanthropy, and thrift. These were the values he instilled in his children, ensuring the Rockefeller legacy would span generations. In contrast to the new money families of the Gilded Age, the Rockefellers adopted a more discreet and sustainable approach to wealth. Consider the Vanderbilt and Gould families, prominent figures of the Gilded Age whom epitomized new money opulence. Cornelius Vanderbilt, renowned for his empire of steamships and the New York Central Railroad, celebrated his fortune with a flourish. The manifestation of his wealth was particularly evident in his family's real estate purchases. The family commissioned grand mansions that showcased their affluence, such as the opulent Vanderbilt mansions on Fifth Avenue, which stood as symbols of their enormous wealth. These included the Triple Palace, a trio of residences designed by famed architects and decorated with marble, gold, and other precious materials. In addition to these residences, Cornelius Vanderbilt II acquired an expensive townhouse on 57th Street, which later had to be sold due to financial strain. Additionally, the Marble House, built by William Kissam Vanderbilt in Newport, Rhode Island, was another display of the Vanderbilt fortune. This lavish mansion, however, was eventually sold due to its exorbitant upkeep costs. Their penchant for grandeur extended to their social events as well, with the Vanderbilt Costume Ball of 1883, a $1 million spectacle, immortalizing their penchant for lavish spending. However, the Vanderbilts' unchecked extravagance, combined with their neglect of long-term financial planning, ultimately led to the erosion of their substantial fortune. This financial mismanagement left many of their descendants grappling with relative poverty, a stark contrast to their forebears' opulence. Similarly, the Gould family, led by railroad magnate Jay Gould, failed to preserve their wealth across generations. Jay Gould was famed for his extravagant lifestyle, evident in his creation of Lyndhurst, a sprawling Gothic revival mansion. His offspring mirrored his extravagance, erecting impressive residences such as a castle-like mansion in Lakewood, New Jersey, and a French chateau-inspired mansion in Tarrytown, New York. However, the Goulds mirrored the Vanderbilts in their lack of emphasis on sustained wealth management. George J. Gould II and Jay Gould II, descendants of this once affluent lineage, pursued commendable careers, yet the family fortune dwindled over time. After George J. Gould's demise, their once formidable wealth had practically evaporated, resulting in their descendants leading lives far from their opulent heritage. Today, the Vanderbilt and Gould legacies serve as potent reminders of the impermanence of wealth without prudent stewardship. The next generation of Rockefellers, however, took a different path, rooted in the old money traditions of privacy, thrift, and philanthropy. These principles played out vividly in the lives of John D. Rockefeller Sr.'s children. John D. Rockefeller Jr., the only son and the primary heir, inherited not only his father's vast fortune, but also his commitment to philanthropy. He financed the construction of the Rockefeller Center in New York and restored colonial Williamsburg, among many other philanthropic endeavors. Yet, despite his eye-watering size of income, he lived a relatively modest lifestyle, avoiding public displays of wealth and maintaining a strong focus on his family. Similarly, Rockefeller's daughters also embodied the old money principles. Elizabeth, the eldest, married a banker and led a private life out of the public eye. Alice, despite suffering from various health issues throughout her life, was known for her philanthropy and carried the family tradition of supporting educational and health causes. Alta, the third child, married a scientist and focused her efforts on supporting scientific research. Edith, the youngest, devoted herself to music and philanthropy, continuing the family's commitment to giving back to society. However, embodying old money principles did not exempt the Rockefeller children from difficulties. John D. Rockefeller Jr., for instance, was often criticized for his ruthless business practices, just like his father. Similarly, Alice struggled with her health, suffering from various illnesses throughout her life. The public scrutiny that came with the Rockefeller name was also a constant source of stress for the family. Yet despite these challenges, the old money principles continued to guide them. The Rockefeller children, following their father's example, sought to preserve their wealth for future generations, focusing on long-term financial planning rather than short-term gain. They understood the importance of privacy, choosing to live away from the public eye. They embraced understated elegance and avoided the ostentatious displays of wealth common among new money families. The financial landscape of America's Gilded Age was indeed a volatile crucible, with fortunes being made and lost almost overnight. Within this climate, a distinction arose between new money, the freshly minted wealth of entrepreneurs and industrialists, and old money, the inherited wealth of established families that had accumulated assets over generations. The terms encapsulated more than just the age of wealth. They signified cultural differences, social acceptability, and the capacity for wealth preservation. The Rockefellers, beginning as new money, were no strangers to this volatility. However, their pragmatic approach to wealth accumulation and preservation arguably allowed them to transition into the esteemed category of old money. Key to this transformation was their ability to integrate into high society and form strategic alliances through marriage. The family made insightful choices in matrimony, aligning themselves with well-established families through advantageous marriages. John D. Rockefeller Jr., the sole son of John D. Rockefeller Sr., set the pace in 1901 when he married Abby Aldrich. Abby wasn't just any bride. She was the daughter of U.S. Senator Nelson W. Aldrich, a political powerhouse whose influence stretched from Wall Street to Washington. The Aldrich family had a strong political lineage, and this marital alliance thrust the Rockefellers into significant political circles, offering them not just social prominence, but also a chance to influence policy. Their progeny, representing the third generation of the Rockefellers, adopted this pattern of strategically beneficial marriages. In 1930, Nelson Rockefeller, later to become the Vice President of the United States, married Mary Todhunter Clark. Mary came from an esteemed Philadelphia family known for its quiet yet significant influence in the city's legal and civic affairs. These unions were not solely about the joining of two individuals, but rather about the confluence of power, influence, and long-standing family heritage. The Rockefellers also distinguished themselves through public service and philanthropy. As previously noted, Nelson held the high office of Vice President under President Gerald Ford, reinforcing the family's presence in the nation's political sphere. Simultaneously, his brother Lawrence carved out a niche as a venture capitalist and passionate conservationist, contributing to the preservation of natural habitats and environmental sustainability. Continuing the family's trajectory in public service, John D. Rockefeller IV, more commonly called Jay, Nelson's nephew and a fourth-generation Rockefeller, built a significant political career. Born in 1937, Jay served as West Virginia's Secretary of State and later as the state's governor, impressively holding office from 1977 to 1985. In 1984, he was elected to the United States Senate, serving 5 terms until he decided not to seek re-election in 2014. As a senator, Jay championed issues such as healthcare reform and internet privacy, thus maintaining the family's tradition of public service. Additionally, embedded in the core of the Rockefeller family's legacy is their remarkable philanthropy. The Rockefellers became known as patrons of education and the arts, helping to shape America's cultural landscape. They lent their considerable resources to institutions such as the University of Chicago and the Museum of Modern Art. This deep-rooted philanthropy wasn't simply about donating money, it was an essential tool for shaping their public persona, showcasing their commitment to societal advancement. Yet alongside this is their equally noteworthy ability to amass and preserve substantial wealth. This duality reflects the character of John D. Rockefeller himself, who was known to be a ruthless businessman, yet an incredibly generous philanthropist. Their philanthropic ventures were strategic. They served to not only improve public welfare, but also to bolster their societal standing, assisting in their seamless transition from new money to old money. Through these actions, the Rockefellers were not just cementing their place within societal elites, but also highlighting their dedication to the public good. Therefore, simultaneously, the Rockefellers adopted several strategies to safeguard their wealth, ensuring that it would endure across generations. One significant step in this regard was the establishment of the Rockefeller Foundation in 1913. This move was more than an act of charity. It was a calculated effort to shield their wealth from heavy estate taxes, thereby allowing it to grow and benefit society simultaneously. Over time, the Foundation's immense contributions to public health, education, and arts helped to further establish and fortify the Rockefeller name. Trusts also played a critical role in their wealth preservation strategy. John D. Rockefeller Sr. formed his first trust in 1891, transferring a significant portion of his fortune to it. This move offered both tax advantages and protection against potential heirs' mismanagement, thereby ensuring the continuity of the Rockefeller fortune. In addition, the Rockefellers innovatively used holding companies to manage their diverse business interests. These corporate structures provided a protective shield for their wealth, while also promoting growth. This use of corporate entities set a precedent for future wealthy families, showing how wealth could be protected and multiplied simultaneously. As such, the Rockefellers are a perfect example of how one family managed to become synonymous with philanthropy while maintaining an iron grip on their wealth, demonstrating a duality that has become part of their enduring legacy. On a crisp autumn day in 1958, the Seagram building opens its doors, instantly captivating Park Avenue. This modernist masterpiece, designed by Mies van der Rohe and Philip Johnson, stands as a marvel with its sleek lines and bronze-tinted façade. Crowds gather, their eyes wide with awe, as sunlight reflects off the towering structure, giving it an almost ethereal glow. Its innovative recessed placement, set back from the street, creates a striking plaza that enhances its grandeur. This thoughtful design not only sets a new architectural precedent, but also influences the future of skyscraper construction around the world, emphasizing open space and urban integration. And yet, as people walk by admiring the building's grandeur, few realize the story behind its creation. The Seagram building is the brainchild of the Bronfman family, the multi-billion-dollar old-money Canadian dynasty that started as poor farmers and within just a few short generations became one of North America's wealthiest and most powerful lineages. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll tell their insane rags to riches saga, as they first take over the North America alcohol industry with unmatched finesse, before expanding their empire to entertainment, grabbing the reins of power in the music industry, all the way to their controversial connections to cults, Jeffrey Epstein, and international spy organizations, as we describe, the Bronfmans, the secret wealthy family that owns Canada. As of 2024, the Bronfman family of Canada continues to sit pretty atop a mountain of cash, much like their own version of the Canadian Rockies. And their vast wealth originates from the Seagram Company, an alcohol distillery and household name of drinking that you're probably already aware of, that found its footing during America's dry spell, Prohibition. Indeed, this company didn't just survive, it thrived, turning into a global spirits empire that significantly fattened the family's wallet. Now, when the Bronfmans waved goodbye to Seagram, selling it to Vivendi in 2000 for a staggering $34 billion, they didn't just boost their bank accounts, they rocketed into the financial stratosphere. Not content to rest on their laurels, the family diversified faster than a billionaire at a tax advice seminar, branching into real estate, the music industry, and tech, among other industries. And at the helm of this filthy rich empire is Charles Bronfman, the patriarch with a net worth of $2.5 billion as of 2023. But Charles didn't just ride the Seagram wave until its sail. He also dipped his toes into philanthropic waters, co-founding Taglit Birthright Israel. You know, the program that encourages and even pays Jews from across the diaspora to visit to Israel, and splashing cash on cultural and educational causes across Canada, the US, and Israel. Truly, Charles is the philanthropic face that launched 1,000 tax deductions. Then there's Edgar Bronfman Jr., the prodigal son who spun his part of the family fortune into a media and entertainment career. As the former CEO of Warner Music Group from 2004 to 2011, Edgar redefined the music industry as he helped guide music into the streaming era. Under his watch, WMG embraced digital platforms and tweaked its artist relationships, for better or worse, ensuring the music didn't stop when the market shifted. He then orchestrated a graceful exit, selling WMG to Access Industries for a cool $3.3 billion in 2011. Not to be outdone by his elders, Benjamin Bronfman, Edgar Jr.'s son, tuned into his own entrepreneurial and musical gifts. With a net worth of $100 million, Benjamin isn't just sitting on his surname, he's producing hits. His notable creds include co-producing Kanye West's Monster and contributing to the controversial song New Slaves, snagging him a Grammy nod. But the Bronfmans also know a thing or two about luxury. And in 2008, thieves tested this knowledge by targeting the 22,000 square foot mansion of one Paul and Judy Bronfman. The robbers made off with Stanley Cup rings and a cache of diamonds and gold, just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the hidden wealth of the family legacy. Not every Bronfman, however, has faced such misfortune. And Jeremy Bronfman, Edgar Sr.'s grandson, splurged on a $29 million Santa Monica estate in 2021. But this isn't just any pad. It's a 1920s Spanish colonial-style mansion featuring everything from a bocce court to a secret spa. Hidden from prying eyes, this estate offers privacy, luxury, and a few fountains for good measure. Because when you're a Bronfman, why not? Yet, if we turn back the clock a little more than a century, we would see the Bronfman family little more than struggling farmers as they tried to build a life in the new world. Let's head over to the next chapter to find out how this Canadian rags-to-riches tale began. The first family patriarch, and the one who would set the foundations for the Bronfman dynasty's unfathomable wealth, was one Samuel Bronfman, born in 1889 aboard a ship en route to Canada. emerging from the depths of the then Russian Empire. You see, Samuel and his parents were Jewish refugees escaping the brutal pogroms of Tsarist Russia. These pogroms were violent riots aimed at persecuting Jews, often with the support or indifference of local authorities, and consequently, fleeing this malevolent oppression, the Bronfmans immigrated to Wapella in Saskatchewan's district of Assiniboia before moving to Brandon, Manitoba. Now, the name Bronfman itself is closely associated with Jewish families, particularly of Russian Jewish and Romanian Jewish ancestry, and its actual meaning adds a shot of irony to the entire family history. It derives from the Yiddish word Bronfen, meaning liquor, vodka, or spirits, and is related to the German word Brandwein, which refers to, again ironically, distilled spirits. And the name originally meant the man who made or sold whiskey. Now, Samuel's parents, once prosperous in Tsarist Russia, arrived in Canada with their rabbi and 2 servants, and Yechiel Bronfman, Samuel's father, attempted to recreate his past success, but found tobacco farming incompatible with the harsh Canadian climate. To survive, Yechiel took on work as a labourer for the Canadian Northern Railway before securing a better job in a sawmill. Then, Yechiel and his sons turned to selling firewood and trading frozen whitefish to sustain themselves through the winters. Eventually, they moved into trading horses, which led them into the hotel and bar business, and in 1903, the family purchased a hotel. With this, young Samuel, recognizing that alcohol sales were highly profitable, established himself as a liquor distributor. Thus, in 1924, Samuel founded the Distillers Corporation in Montreal, specializing in affordable whiskey. And during Prohibition in Canada, Samuel and his brothers sold mail-order liquor. Furthermore, during this public banning of alcohol use, Samuel cleverly navigated the era's stringent regulations by disguising alcohol sales under medicinal labels. His strategic foresight to stockpile whiskey prior to the repeal of Prohibition in the United States positioned Seagram to swiftly capture the pent-up demand for quality spirits, drastically altering the landscape of the liquor industry. However, it was in 1928 that Samuel's vision led to the acquisition of Joseph E. Seagram & Sons, a move that fortified his company's market position. This acquisition was a prelude to broader expansion, which saw Seagram extend its reach into wines, rums and whiskies, establishing a formidable global footprint. And parallel to Samuel's business exploits, his wife, Sadie Rosner Bronfman, championed philanthropic causes. She played a pivotal role in the Young Women's Hebrew Association in Montreal, enhancing its programs and supporting Jewish women's empowerment. Sadie's efforts extended to founding the Canadian Youth Aliyah and supporting the arts, notably through what became known as the Siegel Center. As time went on, in the 1930s, Samuel's ability to stockpile resources and redefine whiskey from a bootlegged good to a premium product marked a significant evolution in the industry. He introduced rigorous standards for bottling and quality control, fostering a new level of consumer trust and brand loyalty. Then, the era following World War II was marked by strategic growth through acquisitions and diversification. Seagram expanded its portfolio, engaging in collaborations with European liquor brands and entering new markets like rum. This period therefore solidified Seagram's status as a powerhouse in the global beverage industry. Then, a defining moment in Seagram's history, and indeed in modern architecture, was the construction of the Seagram building in New York City in 1958. At a construction cost of $41 million, it was the world's most expensive skyscraper at the time, setting a benchmark for office towers worldwide and leaving an enduring legacy in architecture and urban planning. However, the life of family patriarch and the living embodiment of their success exemplified in the Seagram's building was only just the beginning of this old money dynasty's expansion into massive wealth. Edgar Miles Bronfman Sr. was born on the 20th of June 1929 in Montreal, Quebec, and entered the world as a scion of the by then very prominent Jewish-Canadian Bronfman family. Under the roof of Samuel Bronfman and Sadie Rosner Bronfman, the household vibrated with the rhythms of Jewish tradition. Kosher meals were not merely eaten, They were ceremonies of faith, and weekends echoed with the teachings of their heritage. Yet, Edgar and his younger brother Charles were pupils of two worlds, their weekdays spent in private Anglophone schools, absorbing lessons in chapels and navigating diets alien to their upbringing. His academic pursuits in Canada were rigorous and continued at Williams College in the United States, but the call of home brought him back to Montreal, where he completed a bachelor's degree in commerce at McGill University in 1951. And the Bronfman estate in Westmount, where Edgar grew up, was a fortress of luxury, staffed with a butler, a cook, 3 maids, a laundress, a gardener, a chauffeur, and 2 nannies. Despite this opulence, Edgar recalled a home life marked by a palpable emotional void, a glaring contrast to the material abundance that surrounded him. This juxtaposition of emotional scarcity against the backdrop of financial wealth profoundly shaped his adult life, culminating in a poignant return to his roots and emergence as a pivotal figure in Jewish philanthropy. And Charles Rosner Bronfman, Edgar's younger brother, shared a similar upbringing. Born in June 1931, also in Montreal, his formative years echoed Edgar's, rich in privilege and expectation. Charles's educational path mirrored Edgar's, culminating in a Bachelor of Arts in Economics and Political Science from McGill University. Soon, Edgar assumed his destined role in Seagram, the family's distilled beverage empire, becoming its transformative leader, president, treasurer, and CEO from the 1950s through the 1990s. Joining the company in 1951 and quickly taking charge of its U.S. operations in 1953, he initiated a period of aggressive expansion and diversification. Under his stewardship, Seagram not only broadened its product range, but also ventured into wines, champagnes, and cognac, significantly diluting its dependency on whiskey. This strategic diversification was highlighted by the acquisition of Tropicana products in 1988, propelling Seagram into the non-alcoholic beverage market. Moreover, Edgar's vision led to lucrative investments in non-traditional sectors, such as a significant stake in the chemical behemoth DuPont. This venture not only diversified Seagram's portfolio, but also underlined Edgar's capacity to identify and capitalize on opportunities outside the traditional liquor market. During his tenure, Seagram's influence was unmatched in the distilled spirits market in the United States, with 1 in 3 alcoholic beverages consumed in the 1950s being produced by Seagram. Charles, not to be overshadowed, also made substantial contributions to Seagram, joining the company in 1951 and ascending to roles of increasing responsibility. In addition to his corporate achievements, Charles's tenure as chairman of the Montreal Expos brought Major League Baseball to Canadian soil, marking another notable chapter in his diverse career. His business endeavors in Israel, like the expansion of the Supersol grocery chain and the acquisition of Core Industries Limited, further showcased his business prowess and dedication to growth and innovation. However, with great power comes not only great responsibility, but also great scrutiny, and the Bronfman legacy has had much of it over the decades. Despite their monumental philanthropic efforts and prodigious business acumen, the Bronfman family's association with the mega group adds another layer to their story. Founded in 1991 by Charles Bronfman and the recently controversial tycoon Les Wexner, this informal assembly of influential Jewish entrepreneurs included Hollywood director Steven Spielberg and Seagram chairman Edgar Bronfman Sr. Meeting biannually, they discussed philanthropy and Jewish affairs, significantly impacting initiatives like Birthright Israel and the Partnership for Excellence in Jewish Education. But speculation and controversy have always trailed the mega group, particularly due to its alleged ties to intelligence operations. Reports suggest the group maintained contacts with Mossad, potentially influencing U.S. foreign policy in the Middle East. These allegations imply that the mega group might have served as a covert base for intelligence activities within the United States, though solid evidence remains elusive. And the involvement of Jeffrey Epstein, a financier notorious for his criminal activities related to sex trafficking, further complicates the Bronfman history. Epstein's close association with Les Wexner, a mega group founder, is particularly troubling. Wexner hired Epstein as his financial manager, granting him significant control over his financial affairs, including essentially gifting Epstein his notorious New York townhouse mansion and giving power of attorney and a board position at the Wexner Foundation to Epstein. Furthermore, Epstein reportedly used his connections within the mega group to create a network of high-ranking contacts in business, media, and politics. Epstein's ties to the mega group have fueled suspicions about his potential involvement in intelligence operations. Yet, the Bronfman legacy is not solely defined by controversy. Charles Bronfman, Samuel's progeny, furthered this benevolent heritage by co-founding Birthright Israel in 1999 alongside Michael Steinhardt. This initiative, aimed at fortifying Jewish identity and continuity, offers young Jewish adults from around the globe a complimentary 10-day sojourn to Israel, strengthening their bonds with their heritage and the Jewish state. Since its inception, Birthright Israel has welcomed over 850,000 participants from 68 countries, fundamentally altering their connection to Jewish culture and Israel. Research indicates that Birthright Israel significantly boosts Jewish identification among youths, cementing its reputation as a pivotal Jewish cultural experience. And Adam Bronfman, standing on the shoulders of his forebears, continues to weave this familial narrative of philanthropy with a focus on Jewish learning and community building. As president of the Samuel Bronfman Foundation, named for his grandfather, Adam champions religious pluralism and Jewish education. His tenure has seen significant expansions in Jewish learning and community outreach programs, particularly through his involvement with Hillel International and the creation of Hillel chapters in places like Santa Barbara and Utah. Further, Adam has actively engaged in the growth of Temple Har Shalom in Park City, Utah, funding its construction and endowing a rabbinical chair in honor of his grandmother, Saidi Rosner Bronfman. His dedication also manifests in his critique of divisive religious policies in Israel, advocating for a more inclusive Jewish practice across various denominations. And yet, the pendulum's swing of shadowy connections and public-facing philanthropy in the Bronfman family doesn't stop simply with Megagroup or their work with Israel. As we'll see in the next chapter, family members have also been both the victims and the perpetuators of some of the most salacious crimes. In the summer of 1975, a sinister plot enveloped the young heir of the Bronfman legacy. Samuel Bronfman II, just 21 and an heir to the Bronfman fortune, vanished in a dramatic incident that captivated the nation. On August 8th, after a seemingly ordinary dinner at his father's residence in Yorktown Heights, New York, Samuel departed alone in his vehicle. As dawn broke, the Bronfman household was shaken by a chilling phone call. Samuel, with a tremor in his voice, announced his abduction. The perpetrators, Mel Patrick Lynch and Dominic Byrne, were merciless, and they demanded an unprecedented ransom of $4.6 million, threatening to kill Edgar Bronfman Sr. with cyanide-laced bullets if their demands were unmet. Samuel, they claimed, lay buried with a limited air supply, a macabre countdown ticking away. The media seized upon the story, transforming it into a spectacle that drew throngs of reporters and the morbidly curious to the Bronfman estate. Despite the kidnappers' desperate pleas for silence, the public thirst for details only intensified. For days, Edgar Bronfman Sr. dutifully followed their cryptic instructions, navigating from one payphone to another in the vicinity of John F. Kennedy Airport. On August 16th, the crucial exchange occurred. Edgar met one of the criminals in Woodside, Queens, handing over half of the ransom, $2.9 million, while the FBI watched from the shadows. They traced the getaway car to Lynch's apartment in Brooklyn, but chose patience over immediate action. The next day, law enforcement struck. They stormed Lynch's apartment and found Samuel Bronfman, a sight to freeze the blood, bound, gagged, and blindfolded. Lynch and Byrne were promptly arrested, but the trial that followed was a bitter pill. The defense painted Samuel as a willing participant in his own kidnapping. This twist, seeding doubt, led to their acquittal on kidnapping charges, though they were convicted of extortion. The verdict left the Bronfman family feeling abandoned by justice, the accusations against Samuel leaving scars that would never heal. Years passed, and the Bronfman legacy grew even more tangled. Sarah and Claire Bronfman, heiresses to the Seagram's liquor empire, became entangled with alleged cult Nexum in the early 2000s. Sarah's introduction to Nexum came via a family friend in 2002 during a period of existential searching. She swiftly became enamored with Keith Ranier's so-called self-help group, plunging deep into its folds and persuading her sister Claire to join her. Their father, initially intrigued, grew wary upon discovering Claire's massive loans to Ranier, eventually branding Nexum as a cult. Sarah's role, while significant, was largely behind the scenes, providing financial support and participating in Nexum's inner circle. Her dedication persisted even as allegations of abuse emerged. In 2019, she severed her ties, relinquishing her stakes in Nexum properties in a complex financial arrangement, but her involvement left a lasting impression. Claire's involvement, however, ran deeper and darker. She sought personal redemption within Nexum, becoming one of its most fervent supporters and financiers. Her contributions, estimated at $150 million, funded legal battles against Nexum's detractors and even Ranier's private jet expenses, and this devotion led to her downfall. In 2019, Claire pled guilty to charges related to harboring illegal aliens for financial gain and fraudulent identification use. Despite her plea, Claire's loyalty to Ranier and Nexum remained unshaken. The court, however, saw through her façade. In September 2020, Claire was sentenced to 6 years and 9 months in prison, exceeding prosecutors' recommendations, and the judge condemned her use of wealth and status to intimidate and retaliate against Nexum's opponents. Yet, even behind bars, her steadfast support for Ranier continued to provoke controversy and fascination. The Bronfman name, once synonymous with opulence and philanthropy, now bore the stigma of scandal and crime, a stark transformation under the relentless scrutiny of public and media alike. And yet, even with all of the controversy, their next generations have continued on from success to success. We'll see in the next chapter. Stephen Bronfman, a luminary of Canadian commerce and heir to the storied Seagram Empire, has become a central figure in the political landscape of Canada, particularly with the Liberal Party. And his influence was especially prominent from the early 2000s to the 2010s, a time marked by his deep political engagement. The pivotal moment in Bronfman's political story occurred in 2013, when Justin Trudeau, then a hopeful for the leadership of the Liberal Party, enlisted Bronfman's support. Bronfman utilized his expansive network and financial acumen to secure crucial funds for Trudeau's campaign, and his efforts were integral to Trudeau's victory and his ascent to the Prime Minister's office in 2015. With Trudeau in power, Bronfman was appointed chief fundraiser for the Liberal Party, charged with rejuvenating its financial structure. His role was explicitly non-voting, centered solely on fundraising efforts, a point emphasized by party officials to quell any speculation about his influence over policy. However, 2017 brought controversy for Bronfman through the Paradise Papers scandal. The documents revealed his and his associates' use of offshore havens, suggesting that millions were channeled through the Colbert Trust in the Cayman Islands by Bronfman's firm, Claridge. These revelations ignited discussions on potential tax avoidance, though Bronfman and his team maintained that their actions were legal and fully compliant with existing laws. Despite these challenges, Bronfman maintained significant sway within the Liberal Party, and his long-standing friendship with Trudeau and their mutual support cemented his status as a crucial player in the party's fundraising success. Their close relationship was evident in their public appearances, from personal milestones like Trudeau's wedding to prestigious events such as state dinners with foreign dignitaries. Meanwhile, Edgar Bronfman Jr., another scion of the Bronfman family, made unforgettable marks on the music industry during the 1990s. As head of Seagram, Edgar was not satisfied with overseeing the family's liquor business alone, and he soon envisioned transforming Seagram into a significant entertainment conglomerate, particularly within the music sector. This vision led to the landmark purchase in 1995 of an 80% stake in MCA Records from Matsushita for $5.7 billion, a sum far surpassing Sony's expenditure on CBS Records in the previous decade. This acquisition heralded Seagram's foray into the music industry, with Edgar quickly rebranding MCA Records as Universal Music Group, or UMG, which would come to dominate the global music scene. Under Edgar's leadership, UMG was reinvigorated by strategic acquisitions, including the monumental purchase of Polygram in 1998 for $10.4 billion. And despite the digital revolution and declining physical album sales, Edgar remained an optimistic proponent of streaming and subscription models, anticipating their potential to revolutionize music distribution and ensure industry growth. Under his stewardship, UMG flourished, navigating the competitive landscape of the music industry and adapting to the digital age, securing its position as a titan in the realm of global music. Similarly, Benjamin Bronfman, born in 1982, had musical inclinations that took a notable turn when he crossed paths with Kanye West. Collaborating with West, he co-produced tracks like Monster from the Grammy-winning album My Beautiful Dark Twisted Fantasy and contributed to New Slaves, the lead single on West's Yeezus, a work that garnered a Grammy nomination. But Bronfman's entrepreneurial zeal wasn't confined to music. In 2007, his environmental interests were on display when he co-founded Global Thermostat with Graciela Cicilniski, an economist. This venture focused on developing technology to capture carbon dioxide directly from the atmosphere. By 2010, they had realized their vision with a pilot plant at the Stanford Research Institute, marking a significant step in the fight against climate change. In 2018, Bronfman diversified his business interests by founding DGH, an investment firm targeting the burgeoning medical cannabis industry. He also took on a directorial role at Bedrocan International, a European company specializing in pharmaceutical-grade cannabis. These days, his investments span various sectors, from technology startups to real estate, collectively amassing a net worth of $100 million by 2024. Similarly, Hannah Bronfman, born in October of 1987, also in New York City, carved her own investment niche, leveraging the Bronfman family name. Armed with a degree from Bard College, Hannah invests early-stage ventures intersecting wellness, beauty, and technology, such as Kindbody, topicals, and poppy seed health. Beyond her entrepreneurial endeavors, much like other millennial and Gen Z Bronfmans, Hannah has made her mark as a DJ, captivating audiences at high-profile brand events for Bulgari, Dior, and Fendi. Thus, from their humble origins, tilling the soil as struggling farmers, the Bronfman family first leveraged hotels. Then, by using that excess cash to buy Seagram, they not only dominated the alcohol industry, but also ultimately expanded their empire into entertainment and finance, shaping a legacy of unparalleled global impact in the end. When you think of Canada, you probably imagine overly nice conversations, endless hockey rinks, and lush landscapes that take the breath away faster than a Canadian wind gust. Known for its snowy winters, awkward level politeness, and majestic moose sightings, Canada embodies a sense of rustic charm and tranquility. But what if we were to tell you that alongside these charming stereotypes, there are some big maple leaf-sized bucks being thrown around up north? Indeed, the Thomsons, the richest family in Canada, bar none, and one of the wealthiest in the world, have come a long way from their humble beginnings as poor Scottish farmers. More than just rich people, they've worked their way into the British aristocracy, owning the media conglomerate Thomson Reuters, and wielding enormous influence over Canada's economic and cultural landscapes. And yet, despite their staggering fortune, the Thomsons have mastered the art of staying out of the spotlight, avoiding the typical trappings of the wealthy elite. In today's episode of Old Money Luxury, we'll dive into their enigmatic world, exploring the rags to riches saga of a family who continue to shape Canada's future from the shadows, as we describe the Thomsons, the secretive family who controls Canada. The Thomson family, one of the wealthiest families in the world and the absolute richest in Canada, sit pretty atop a mountain of cash that's roughly $61.3 billion high. And as of January 2024, this dazzling figure lands them in the 21st spot on Forbes' Real-Time Billionaires list, a club where money talks and where the Thomsons have a lot to say. Now, Their cash cow is the Woodbridge Company, the heavyweight parent of media colossus Thomson Reuters, and what began as Roy Thomson's quaint little radio station in 1930s Ontario has morphed into a global Goliath in news, information and tech services. But the Thomsons aren't ones to rest on their media laurels, and their investment portfolio is a smorgasbord of ventures. For example, current family patriarch David Thomson, the third Baron Thomson of Fleet, runs Morgan Bay Capital, a hedge fund that makes the family's money work as hard as they do. But their empire stretches even further into sports and entertainment via True North Sports and Entertainment, proud owners of the Winnipeg Jets and the Canada Life Centre. You see, David took the reins after his father Kenneth Thomson's death in 2006, and he steered the family's ship into ever-expanding waters with a heady mix of strategic genius and a love for flying under the radar. Osmington Incorporated, David's real estate baby, is no slouch either. The firm's commercial property investments have paid off handsomely, including a $336 million stake sale in retail properties to the Canada Pension Plan in 2010. But the Thomsons are more than financial wizards. They're art connoisseurs par excellence, and their collection is the stuff of dreams, with David amassing masterpieces by Rembrandt, J.M.W. Turner and John Constable. In fact, his stash of Constable's works is reportedly the largest in the world. But what is all that canvas if you can't stash it up in a lavish estate? And David's mammoth-sized Toronto pad in the swanky Rosedale neighbourhood is old money elegance at its finest. This lavish residence, expanded to house his priceless art collection, even boasts an underground gallery. And the property, valued at several $1 million, is just one gem in their glittering private real estate portfolio scattered across North America and Europe. However, despite their mountainous wealth, the Thomson family manages to keep a surprisingly low profile. David, in particular, is an elusive figure, dodging the spotlight and keeping interviews at bay. This air of mystery only adds to the allure of their immense fortune, making their story a captivating saga of success and secrecy. With that said, join us as we play detective on this enigmatic old money dynasty and see what we can find as to their route to wealth in the next chapter. The ancestors of what would become Canada's richest family, and British aristocrats no less, were, believe it or not, small Scottish tenant farmers, toiling on the estates of the Dukes of Buccleuch at Bowness in the parish of Westerkirk, Dumfriesshire, Scotland. Therefore, before the Canadian riches made it rain, the Thomson family's lives were marked by the rhythms of the land, the cycle of seasons, and the whispers of Highland winds. And then, in 1773, Archibald Thomson, driven by the lure of new opportunities and the weight of economic hardship, embarked on a bold journey from Westerkirk to Canada, then British North America. This migration was part of a larger exodus, as many Scots sought refuge from the harsh agricultural reforms and economic pressures of the time, hoping to find prosperity across the Atlantic. Archibald's voyage led him to Quebec, where he married Elizabeth Mackay, and together they ventured further into the wilds of Upper Canada, yet their hearts remained tied to the rugged landscapes of their homeland. In fact, Archibald's brother, David Thomson, etched his name into history by becoming the very first European settler of Scarborough, Ontario. The significance of this milestone cannot be overstated, as Scarborough is one of the most well-known areas in the province and includes numerous landmarks, including the Toronto Zoo, Rouge Park, and the Scarborough Bluffs. Now, the first true family patriarch who helped guide the Thomson name to wealth was Roy Herbert Thomson, born on the 5th of June 1894 in Toronto, Ontario. And his father, Herbert Thomson, a telegraphist turned barber, and his mother, Alice Maud, of English descent, nurtured their family in a humble abode at 32 Monteith Street. And though Roy's early education was cut short when he left school at 14, his year at Mr. Eliot's Business College, where he studied bookkeeping, ignited a spark for commerce within him. His first foray into business came through assisting his affluent Aunt Hyslop, who dealt in second mortgages, and as she was impressed by his meticulous bookkeeping, she entrusted him with greater responsibilities, leading him to co-invest in mortgages by the age of 15, thus beginning his lifelong obsession with wealth accumulation. But the 1920s and 1930s were a tumultuous period for Thomson. At 24, he attempted farming in Manitoba, only to lose most of his capital. Undeterred, he ventured into the auto parts business at 30, facing initial failure due to liquidity issues. Soon, his second attempt saw moderate success, though it didn't bring significant rewards. These early failures, however, only fueled his determination. In the early 1930s, Thomson's entrepreneurial spirit found fertile ground in the radio business. Selling radios in Northern Ontario, he perceived a gap in the market. His customers needed more content. In 1931, he established his own radio station, CFCH, in North Bay, Ontario. And this venture turned out to be a resounding success, boosting his radio sales and generating advertising revenue. Emboldened, he expanded his radio operations, opening a second station in Timmins in 1933. Thomson's pivotal move into the newspaper industry came in 1934, when he acquired the struggling Timmins Daily Press for a down payment of $200. Transforming it from a weekly to a daily paper, he began his expansion into media. Over the next decade, he acquired more radio stations and newspapers, steadily building his media empire. And by the end of the 1940s, Thomson's empire encompassed 19 newspapers, and he held the presidency of the Canadian Daily Newspaper Publishers Association. And his strategy was both simple and effective, acquiring small-town newspapers that enjoyed monopolistic positions in their local markets, ensuring a steady stream of advertising revenue. Thomson's ambitions were not confined to Canada. In 1952, he purchased The Scotsman, a prestigious Edinburgh newspaper, marking his entry into the British media market. 5 years later, he secured the commercial television franchise for Central Scotland, launching Scottish Television, which he famously described as a license to print money due to its profitability. By the late 1950s, his media holdings spanned Canada, the United States, and the United Kingdom. And despite his immense success, Roy Thomson was known for his humility and unpretentious lifestyle. He shunned ostentatious displays of wealth, often using public transportation and focusing on the commercial aspects of his businesses with a meticulous eye. In 1964, Roy Thomson's contributions to the media industry were formally recognized with the title of Baron Thomson of Fleet, cementing his status as a media magnate and fulfilling his long-held aspiration to join the ranks of British peerage. Little did he know, however, that his successes in business and social status were just the beginning of a family empire that would do more than just sell a few newspapers and receive a fancy title. Roy's son and heir apparent, Kenneth Roy Thomson, entered the world on the 1st of September 1923 in Toronto. Although Kenneth's formative years unfolded across Toronto, Ottawa, and North Bay, mirroring the ebb and flow of his father's expanding business ventures. By 1937, the family had returned to Toronto, and young Kenneth found himself enrolled at the esteemed Upper Canada College, where he would receive an education that would serve as a springboard into his future endeavors. However, the outbreak of World War II interrupted Kenneth's academic pursuits, and at the tender age of 19, he joined the Royal Canadian Air Force in December 1942. His role as an instrument mechanic and later as an editor for the RCAF magazine Wings Abroad, stationed in England, hinted at a future intertwined with journalism and media. After the war, Kenneth pursued higher education with vigour, earning a master's degree in law from St John's College, University of Cambridge. And with his studies completed, he returned to Canada in 1947, eager to dive into his father's burgeoning business. Starting humbly as a reporter for the family's Timmins Daily Press, Kenneth's journey through the ranks was one of hands-on learning and relentless determination. After that, for 5 years, Kenneth honed his skills at the Galt Reporter, taking on roles from advertising salesman to general manager. These years provided a comprehensive understanding of the newspaper industry, knowledge that would later prove indispensable. And then, in 1953, Kenneth took the helm of Thomson Newspapers, overseeing Canadian and American operations from Toronto. His personal life also blossomed during this period. He married model Nora Marilyn Lavis in 1956, and the couple welcomed 3 children, David, Peter, and Leslie, later known as Taylor. And the Thomson Empire's global reach expanded under Kenneth's stewardship. In 1966, following his father's acquisition of the Times newspaper in London, Kenneth relocated to England. By 1968, he was chairman of Times Newspapers Limited, immersing himself in the complexities of international media management. Kenneth returned to Toronto in 1970 and became joint chairman of the Thomson organization with his father in 1971. This transition of power was a prelude to his full control of the family business upon Roy Thomson's death in 1976. And as the second Baron Thomson of Fleet, Kenneth inherited a media conglomerate valued at approximately $500 million, with diverse interests spanning newspapers, television, travel, and oil. And Kenneth's leadership marked a strategic pivot for the Thomson Corporation. He refocused the company's efforts on North America, selling the British newspaper assets, including the Times and the Sunday Times, to Rupert Murdoch in 1981, amidst a turbulent labor dispute. This divestment signaled a shift towards specialized information services and electronic publishing. Major acquisitions, such as Wadsworth Textbook Publishing in 1978 and legal publisher West Publishing in 1996, exemplified this new direction. By the dawn of the 21st century, the Thomson Corporation had evolved into a digital media and information powerhouse, leaving its traditional newspaper roots behind. Under Kenneth's astute guidance, the company's value soared from $500 million in 1976 to a staggering $29.3 billion by 2006. And the Thomson family's wealth grew in tandem, with their stake valued at over $19 billion, positioning Kenneth among the world's wealthiest individuals. And yet, despite his monumental success, Kenneth maintained an unassuming lifestyle just like his father. Known for his frugality, he often shunned luxuries, preferring to shop for his groceries, drive himself, and could even be seen riding the London Underground, the public subway, like any other person. And Kenneth's family life was a blend of affluence and caution as well. He and Nora Marilyn Lavis raised their children in an environment steeped in privacy and discretion, with Kenneth keenly aware of the potential pitfalls of inherited wealth and instilled a sense of responsibility and prudence in his offspring. Now, Kenneth's later years were marked by significant philanthropy. His most notable contribution was a $370 million donation of his art collection and funds to the Art Gallery of Ontario in 2002, facilitating a major renovation by architect Frank Gehry. And even in his final years, Kenneth remained actively involved in the family's business through the private holding company, Woodbridge. His sudden death in 2006 at the age of 82 brought an end to an era for the Thomson dynasty, leaving a legacy of profound influence and transformation in the global media landscape. But Kenneth had shared a close bond with his eldest son, David, whom he began grooming from a young age to eventually take over the family business. This plan was part of a vision laid out decades earlier by first family patriarch, the aforementioned Roy Thomson. Thus, when Kenneth Thomson passed away in June 2006, control of the family fortune seamlessly transitioned to David. Roy Thomson had written in his 1975 autobiography, "David, my grandson, will have to take his part in the running of the organization, and David's son too." He further emphasized, "With the fortune that we will leave to them go also responsibilities. These Thomson boys that come after Ken are not going to be able, even if they want to shrug off these responsibilities." The third-generation patriarch, David Kenneth Roy Thomson, was born on the 12th of June 1957 in Toronto. By then, quite naturally, his family was one of immense prestige and influence, with his brother Peter Thomson pursuing a path of speed and adrenaline as a race car driver, and his sister Taylor Thomson carving her own distinct path. David's early years were marked by an education that set the foundation for his future endeavors, and he attended Upper Canada College and the Hall School, institutions known for their rigorous academic standards. In 1978, he completed his studies at Selwyn College, Cambridge, earning a Bachelor of Arts in History. Meanwhile, Peter Thomson's journey took a different route, no pun intended, and Peter's passion for auto racing was evident from a young age. After completing his education at Royal St George's College, he dabbled in photography through unpaid internships at local newspapers, opportunities facilitated by his father, Ken Thomson. Yet the call of the racetrack was too strong to ignore. In 1986, Peter began his rally racing career, swiftly making a name for himself in the sport, including several national championship wins. Now, David's foray into the family business began in the 1990s, with him starting as a junior associate at MacLeod Young Weir in Toronto, a move that proved to be a stepping stone that led to various roles within the Thomson family's extensive enterprises. Managing the Bay store at Cloverdale Mall in Etobicoke and later serving as president of Zellers were pivotal roles that honed his business acumen. However, David sought to carve his own path and founded Osmington Incorporated, a real estate firm that operated independently of the Thomson empire. Osmington focused on acquiring and managing commercial real estate assets for institutional shareholders, including the Thomson family. Osmington's portfolio also boasted a partnership in True North Sports and Entertainment, owning the NHL's Winnipeg Jets and the Canada Life Centre in Winnipeg, Manitoba. Additionally, Osmington took on the ambitious project of redeveloping the retail space of Toronto's Union Station and planned to introduce the Shake Shack fast food chain to Canada with 35 outlets. Inheriting the title of 3rd Baron Thomson of Fleet, David assumed the mantle of family patriarch following his father's passing in 2006. As chairman of Thomson Corporation, he led the company through a significant merger with Reuters in 2008, forming Thomson Reuters, a global information services powerhouse. Despite his prominent role, David's relationship with the family business was fraught with frustration. He often expressed a desire to shift focus toward his passions in art and real estate, a sentiment that was perhaps intensified by the intense media scrutiny surrounding his personal life. One such controversy erupted in 2006 during his divorce from Laurie Ludwig. Their tumultuous relationship and subsequent legal battle captivated the public, revealing allegations of harassment and intimidation. And Ludwig claimed that David and his agents had engaged in intrusive behavior, including unauthorized entry into their home and removal of personal items. The case was set to establish new precedents for extraordinary childcare expenses in Canada, given its high-profile nature and substantial financial implications. David's financial disclosures during the divorce also painted a picture of a complex and intricate corporate structure designed to manage the family's vast wealth. Despite his substantial income, which included a monthly salary exceeding $100,000 and significant trust income, David reported a monthly budget deficit. Ludwig's lawyer criticized the lack of transparency in David's financial disclosures, suggesting that the true extent of his wealth was being concealed. This opacity and the elaborate financial arrangements often became focal points of contention in legal disputes involving the Thomson family. Another significant legal entanglement ensnared Taylor Thomson, David's sister, in a high-profile espionage saga. In 2002, Taylor was implicated in a notorious case involving Anthony Pellicano, a disreputable Los Angeles private investigator, amidst her custody battle with Michael Kolesa, the father of her child. Though she denied these allegations, the case cast a shadow over the family, revealing the extreme measures they would undertake to safeguard their privacy and interests. Throughout these controversies, the Thomson family tried to uphold a stringent code of privacy, employing extraordinary measures to shield their personal lives from the public gaze. Court documents were sealed, and employees were bound by confidentiality agreements. Yet despite these efforts, their legal and financial turmoils occasionally seeped into the public sphere, offering a rare glimpse into the lives of one of Canada's most enigmatic and influential families. These controversies highlighted the delicate balancing act the Thomsons faced, juggling their vast wealth and power with an unrelenting desire for privacy and control over their public image. Therefore, the Thomson family, a towering presence in Canada's social and economic landscape, has long been a magnet for both fascination and scrutiny.